feel like I'm definitely on there.
You can turn yourself off if you want.
I feel like a bar actually would be really good.
That I saw Michelle Obama when last time I was in DC.
Okay, we're on Sonia Watch. If somebody sees Sonia come back in, please tell me.
So to get us in?
I did
get some federal funding?
She was doing her power strike. I'm sure
No, dude, she's saying goodbye to somebody in the foyer. She's going to walk out, and then when everybody gets settled, I'm going to queue, and we'll go to...
Nice, all right.
She wants to bring up the team reports.
Kind of walking around, my wife and my daughter and I. We said, we're kind of peckish. It's like 10 o'clock, it's 7 o'clock. We said, we'll go in and see if these guys are good. So we go in, and we get wanted. We get stopped at the door with our wine. This is, in fact, why my wife wanted to go there. She saw the 3 black Suburbans in front. She's like, somebody big's. I'm like, where is that from?
Check 1 2 1 2. Check.
I think I can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I'm totally good. Like, I turned mine off.
Oh, so we should.
Oh yeah, now I can hear you. You might be a little bit.
Ladies and gentlemen, please return to your seats and the program will resume shortly.
Is this, that sounds good, right? I can hear myself now. Yeah, that's plenty loud? Okay.
I know, but I still think you like it.
Pull it up a little. Check. Yeah, it's on. Drop it like it's hot.
Who was it that said, I don't believe in Beatles, I only believe in music. Thank you. Okay. Pretty soon. Hey, Shannon, do you want to cue the house lights pretty soon? So Sonia's back. She's backstage. Probably 2 more minutes.
The program will resume in 2 minutes. Ushers on the wings. Ushers on the wings. Please assist our patrons in finding their seats.
Ushers on the wings. Deploy photon cannon. I think it's time for a light too. It's time to take you into Oh, sorry, I can do it. I feel like you're the... You can do the 2 lights. You good, Joe? I'm ready for you. Turn the lights down. Oh, okay. Ooh. Yeah. You want somebody to eat it? be sure to fill out your surveys and return them at the end of the event.
Please remember to fill out your surveys and return them at the end of the event. The program will resume shortly.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Okay, that's what we're gonna do then. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's 12:45. We will now reconvene the summit. Please give a warm Bakersfield College welcome to our president, Dr. Sonia Christian.
So for all of you who've been wondering about what happened, my assistant, the fabulous Jennifer Martin, redhead and all, she walked into the glass door, and she's okay. She's got pictures and everything. Not completely okay though. They're doing some X-rays. She hurt her knee, and they're checking out to see what the state of her nose is right now. But she's in high spirits, and she's got chief counts with her, so she's in very good hands. And she wanted me to make sure to let you all know that she's doing well, and she wanted the summit for all of you to stay focused on the work that we're doing with Davis Jenkins and those fabulous researchers out there. And when we were in San Antonio, I keep going back to that story, and Mount SAC, Irvine Valley College, and Bakersfield College were selected as 3 colleges part of a AACC Pathways Initiative. It's a 3-year initiative, and a lot of big wigs like CCRC, that's Jenkins' place, and Achieving the Dream, and AACC, and what were the other partners? Aspen. So you have Josh Weiner and Aspen and Leadership Matters and all that kind of stuff. And also Job for the Futures, I think, kind of came together, and Bill Gates funded them to launch Guided Pathways, sort of an overarching framework integrating instruction, student affairs. And so the colleges there started talking about, California, we have our own quirks and things happening here. So wouldn't it be amazing if we could have sort of a California initiative here and think about how we can systematically integrate the different pieces of work, whether it is placement with multiple measures, the advising piece, and then Kristen Barnes talked about the whole community coming together with the high schools and the universities. And so many of us have started the conversation. Butte is considering it. Saracoso, Jill Board, thank you so much. You're fabulous. And several others. So please be thinking about that if this is something you'd like to participate in. And so when I mentioned, when I was talking to Davis, he said, you need to have some local folks. And when he knew that John Hetz, you were going to be here, oh my gosh, he's like, oh, John can totally get this done. And we also, the AACC Pathways Project also has Darla Cooper, who's an advisor, and she's part of the RP group. And for those of you staying on tomorrow for the workshop, Darla is going to be leading the workshop. So we've got just amazing individuals like this team here working with folks around the country. So we can really make this happen. Maybe we start a cohort of colleges 1 year after the national cohort and start sort of really operationalizing some of these discussions. I wanted to recognize a foundation, and I know it's dark, I can't see you, you can see me, but Sean Whalen from College Futures actually funded this event, and I really want to thank Sean. And one of the things that I really enjoyed in our conversations when College Futures was here with us was Sean was in the 4-year school system, and he's really enjoying the incredible place that community colleges are in really transforming communities and local communities. He's truly a systems thinker, very much data-driven, so he's really honing it into all these research presentations. But if you run into Sean Whalen, he's a good guy. Say hi to him, and thank you, Sean. So with that, we're going to be turning to team reports, and then we're going to go into our sort of our big research presentation. We have 3 teams signed up, so teams, take it away.
Hello, my name is Alicia Enegas, and I'm a transfer specialist from Cal State Bakersfield.
And I'm Natasha Harris, the CSUB STEM Transfer Specialist.
So when we initially started thinking about the guided pathways model, we were thinking about some of our advising sessions when we work our way backwards with our students who are interested in transferring to CSUB. One of our questions that we ask is, so, what do you want to be when you grow up? And how are you going to get there? Oftentimes, students only think about the bachelor's as being the preliminary stepping stone to get to where they want to be. But oftentimes, Natasha and I talk about, well, in order to be a psychologist, you actually need to go further than just a bachelor's. And you need to think about what your grades are now and how those opportunities are going to get you to where you want to go. Oftentimes, when we talk to students, a 2.3 is not an opportune GPA to get them into their master's. But once we bring up those conversations, it really starts to get them thinking about what the realities are.
And along with that, with meeting with the students in the initial visit and planning the end goal, we then take that step backwards to now say, this is how you get there. This is how you go from BC or Syracuse or Taft to get on to Cal State Bakersfield. The great thing with our community is that we've built a lot of pathway programs already, and especially in the STEM field, we have pathways set up where as long as you complete this gen ed and those lower division classes here, those intro to biologies, when you get to Cal State Bakersfield, it is that 60 or 70 units to go to complete your degree. And the good thing is we show them right from the front. Here it is. Here's completing at BC. Here's Cal State. Here's your bachelor's to now go on to your master's program. So that's the great thing that we have going with our community college partnerships, and we enjoy working with you guys all.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Rosita Ramirez. I'm actually joining you not as a community college, but as a national nonprofit organization. We both work with the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials Educational Fund. And so you may be wondering what a national nonprofit would be doing in this important discussion. For our work, we have the privilege of working with education policymakers at all levels of office. So state legislators, community college trustees, school board members, and our mission as an organization is to make sure that more Latinos are involved in the democratic process, and so hence we work with those professional lawmakers and give them the kind of convening that you are all having here today. So we're here really to learn what is guided pathways and how we can translate that into policy for our policymakers. So having the discussion that you're having, but having our policymakers come together from across jurisdictional background. We, I think, have seen some of those themes coming up in the day this morning about how we tend to work in silos. Our job is to kind of break down those silos with the policymakers and have the school board members talk to the community college trustees, talk to their state legislators, seeing where there's troubleshooting that needs to happen. And a lot of the work that we've been hearing today is very relevant to what they want to do and what they've been asking us as an organization to provide them more professional development around. So that's a little bit about the organization and the work that we do. And my colleague here is going to talk a little bit about some of the conversations we were having with some colleagues at lunch.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Cynthia Velasco, and I work with Dr. Ramirez at the Naleo Educational Fund. So this afternoon, we had the great pleasure of having lunch with some folks from College of the Canyons. Thank you for letting us eat lunch with you. And we had a very exciting conversation, again, about this morning and thinking about student outcomes and end goals. And we shared stories about students, they shared stories about students who have reached some of those outcomes but have additional barriers that they need to cross. And then we got into an engaging discussion about implications of design and implementation. So what does this look like for non-traditional students? We spoke about anyone here from Rio Hondo Community College? I went to Rio Hondo, I got my AA. Where I lived, I had various choices of where I could go. I could go to Rio Hondo, Mount Sac, Citrus, even Cerritos College. So we spoke about populations that maybe if a class was not available for me because it was impacted. I could easily go to Mount Sac or Cerritos or somewhere else. For those students, especially that are trying to get into a nursing program and they definitely need those classes, what does these pathways look like? Should a student just stay at Rio Hondo because they have a design plan there? Should they go to Mount Sac? Again, what does that look like? We know what the outcome is, but again, the pathway may look a little bit different. Another touch point that we had was faculty. In the book, it really highlights the importance of faculty at community colleges to design these roadmaps for us, and again, just their support. Because of funding cuts, we know that a lot of these classes are not taught by full-time faculty. So what is their stake in these roadmaps and in the investment of our students? So again, just some things for us to consider. Thank you again, College of the Canyons, for letting us eat lunch with you. And again, we're here to learn some more. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Donna Cooper. I'm the Basic Skills Coordinator at Fresno City College, and I was voted by those at my table to be the one to speak. So yeah. So a couple of things that for us that are takeaways. You know, as a large college, we're always struggling with how to make change happen and how to do it in a quicker way than sometimes it takes for change to undertake. But a couple of things that we felt that this would help us with the work that we're already doing. One is we are one of the pilot projects for the EPI, the Educational Planning Initiative, and we think that leveraging that along with talking about pathways is a way that we might be able to leverage some of the work we're doing on our campus. We have a design science high school, so it's another great way to create a very guided pathway for students. And we can also capitalize on the work that we did as part of the TACT Ramp, the C6 initiative, that a number of our colleges in the Central Valley were a part of, because so one of the things we did is to take some of our CTE programs and create a much more guided pathway where we embedded the remediation within the pathway so that students could finish those certificates and go on to other degrees. And so, so the next steps for us, that's one of our big conversations at lunch was, so, okay, like what do we do when we go home today? So what do we do tomorrow, or what do we do the next week? And we had for a while done something on our campus called Colleagues and Conversations, just to try and spark conversations. And we had some really great things that happened. We did that about a year and a half ago, and we thought we would reinstitute that, although one of our colleagues wants to call it Colleagues Coffee and Conversation because he wants to make sure coffee is there. Yes, Ray, that's you. And so we thought it would be a great way for us to use the book maybe as a starting point for that, and to make sure that we are sharing that information with our colleagues and really talking about that, and then using it as something that we do in our equity plan and our SSSP and all of those plans, that we can put that all together. So, and then we have a ton of questions that we haven't solved, so if any of you solve them, just let us know. Thanks.
Well, welcome back. Thank you for coming. We've had some great team reports. We had the great panel. We heard about various programs and initiatives that are already being launched at some schools. At Butte College, there seem to be a lot of desperate programs they're putting together, as well as I think a lot of colleges have lots of these programs. And the question we're looking at is how to sew them together to make a pathway, right? As a faculty member, I kind of look at this a little bit different sometimes. I look at my students in my classroom and how that relates. And I recall from the text, Redesigning America's Community Colleges, Chapter 3 talks about the classroom a lot and instruction. And it says we need to get away from just knowledge, I think those words, giving, dispensing knowledge transmission, and instead we need to be focused on skills development. And I'm thinking about in my classroom how that has changed, right? I used to stand at the lectern and I would tell them what to think, and then I would give them an assignment and I'd say, write me a research paper. And they were horrible. They didn't know where to look for resources. They didn't understand the material. They didn't analyze them. They didn't know. And so I learned as an instructor, I needed to give more instruction. I needed to give guided pathways in my classroom. I had to explain, here's what a primary document is. Here's how you find a primary source. Here's how you analyze it for biases. Here's how you figure out what kind of context is going on. Why is the author saying this? Here's how you pick it apart. Here's how you make your own organization, your own argument. Here's how you edit. here's how you revise, here's how you get a final draft. And I walk them through all these stages. I don't like to, it's a lot of work, but it makes such a better paper at the end. And at the end of the class, they feel like they didn't just do something they're going to forget, but they actually developed a skill, something they're proud of. I give almost all A's on those final papers because by the time they get to that final paper, it's just been worked and massaged, and we work in a partnership. And so I'm thinking about this developing my own teaching, and if there's a parallel between the classroom and piecing together all these guiding models, and similarly at the college level, we're piecing together all these programs, can we scale up that same basic idea of, are we dispensing knowledge, are we giving out, or are we developing skills? So I hope that the programs we're developing to create our pathways are empowering students and giving them the abilities to develop skills. As we move forward today, we've brought 3 expert specialists in California research that will be talking to us a little bit about efficiency here in instruction and college management. The floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Craig Hayward, Director of Research Planning and Accreditation at Irvine Valley College, and I'm going to reach for the clicker here and hope for no feedback. So I drew the short straw, so I get to go first today, but we'll be kind of cycling through. And we constructed our presentation today in the form of a guidebook, and what better guidebook, of course, than the Hitchhiker's Guide. Allusion to Douglas Adams' famous Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe. And so this is the Hitchhiker's Guide to Guided Pathways. And of course, as we all know, the Hitchhiker's Guide starts off in large friendly letters with some very good advice. 2 words, don't panic. What have we gotten ourselves into? A very wonderful enterprise. And we're here to provide some specific evidence-based, fire-tested strategies and practices and tell you a little bit about the research whereby we know that these are effective tools that you can deploy in your quest to create and promote guided pathways at your colleges. So engagement is an important part of the guided pathways model, student engagement, but what we're talking about here is actually engagement with faculty and staff and administrators, because we knew we would be going after lunch. We thought it would be fun to make sure that everybody was awake, and we don't have a cheer coach with us, so we thought we would do a little quiz about mascots and see if you know your mascots. Now, I didn't know that there was going to be such a great diversity of colleges represented here, so I just went with the mascots for the 3 sort of official AACC Pathways colleges. So who can tell me what this dashing figure, who go, hey, all right, okay, that's the home team, the Renegades. What about this friendly fellow? All right, there's some spirit. Who's this guy? Anybody know? Little Joe Mountie, that's right, Little Mountie. And yeah, he's kind of scowling, but he's also high-fiving the kid. It's a mixed message. That is Mount Sac. That's Mount Sac, our second Pathways college. Let's see, does anyone know what the mascot is for Irvine Valley College?
Lasers.
Hey, look at that guy. Yes, the man from the internet knew. It's the Irvine Valley College Lasers. It's not cute and cuddly, but funny story. Carolyn Arnold, the director of research at Chabot, did a replication of Peter Barr's important work about student segmentation, student groups, kind of deriving them from their patterns of course taking and looking at their pathways through college. And the group that had the sort of straightest shot through the college, the group that she was able to define, guess what she called that group? The Lasers. And I thank her every day for that, because I get to say all of our students at IVC are lasers. Go Lasers. All right, and a shout out to all of the folks watching on the live stream. So hopefully that woke you up a little bit, brought you back from lunch. This is a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about today. So a little detour into the meaningful metaphors of guided pathways. And then John's going to clear the brush and set the stage. Terrence will walk us through the multiple measures work that's been going on in the state for the past 3 years or so. And then we'll cycle back into acceleration, some different forms of acceleration. The California Acceleration Project has piloted and co-requisite acceleration. And then wrap up, leaving some time for some Q&A. So this slide asks, how are we talking when we're talking about guided pathways? And so we've heard today Davis Jenkins talk with us about academic momentum, and that is a term that has a pedigree in educational research. And indicators work group. And it splits into transfer level or college level assignment and then remedial assignment. It splits the incoming students into two pathways. And so on the upper path, we have students with a 75% pass rate going directly into transfer. Their throughput rate's 75%. But students who are assigned to remediation have a 70% success rate because at that higher level, but first they have to pass through the lower level remedial work. I'm going to back up a second. And 70% are being assigned to remediation. So 70% are going through the sort of lower velocity, lower momentum remedial pathway, and we have a 42% overall college level rate. Oh, by the way, that's the first incidence of 42 in the presentation. Getting back to, there are 3 incidences of 42. See if you can find them all. It's like a scavenger hunt. So now here we have the exact same pass rates. We have 75% at the college level. We have 70% of the students who come up through the remedial pathway being successful at the college level, although only 40% are moving through to college level. However, what changed is we now have a 52% overall throughput. So we went from 42% to 52%. We had a 10-point increase. So that's a huge increase. And what happened is we moved from having, I don't know what I'm doing here, but we moved from having 70% of students assigned to remediation to having 50% of students assigned to remediation. And so as we get more into the rest of the presentation, we'll talk about how there's been a strong tendency to underplace students, that we've been putting students into remediation unnecessarily, and that really hampers their momentum, their velocity, their progress on the pathway.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
So what we want to do is kind of break out a very specific piece of what Davis talked about earlier today. And we want to talk about the moment that students are coming to our colleges and setting up the pathways themselves. And so we want to think about how we're going to clear the trailheads, build good trailheads for the pathways that we develop. If we don't have a good trailhead, the students aren't going to make it onto the pathways that we build. So a good set of college pathways is going to have trailheads that get students into the pathways that we want, that are clear and easy to access. We need to make sure that we clear unnecessary obstacles that might be in our way, things that may have happened when we weren't watching. We want to remove barriers to entry, right? Things that make it too hard to get to, that where the trailheads preclude lots of students making it in. You might have underdeveloped trailheads like this, or trailheads that have a really steep incline that make it really hard to get to. We want to make sure that we maintain that trailhead so that students can actually see the path that we've designed, right? There's a path there, but it's not very well maintained. And we need to build from existing functional pathways. That could be the greatest pathway in the world, but the students will never get there, right? So we need to make sure that we're thinking carefully about how students are starting and how we've built that trailhead for students. So what we want is we want to avoid trailheads that feel like that feel to students like the bridge of Khazad-dûm, right, where you have Gandalf standing going, you shall not pass, or the grand staircase of Hogwarts where it's constantly changing and I'm not sure where I am. We want something that looks like the Limpy Creek Trailhead in Southern Oregon, right, where you have a clear, direct path onto the pathway. You have support structures around for the students who need it, but they're on the side. Right? They don't block students who know their path and are ready to go. There are support structures for the students that need additional support, multiple different types of support structures. And then there are ample maps, guides, additional information for the students along the way. Right? So that's what we want. This is what we want our front door experience, our trailheads into our guided pathways to feel like. And so this is a very sensitive clicker, as you can see. All right, so what I'm going to talk about is some of my experiences as the Director of Institutional Research at Long Beach City College. So I know some of you are here today. I can't see you. I know some of you are following at home. I just want to say that this work reflects the work of hundreds of staff and faculty on these types of projects. And so I'm very excited to see hundreds of you in the audience because that's how this work gets done. So I'm going to talk a little bit about one part of the overall program. And there's many parts to it, but we're going to focus on one part of building the trailhead. And so what we did is we went to our, we went to one of our partners at CalPass, who at the time was Terrence Willett. I now work on CalPass, to build an intersegmental data set to try and understand how students move between K-12 and community colleges so that we had a better understanding of how students were going to place when they came to Long Beach City College and how they were going to perform once they were in our classes, right? And what we wanted was to find ways to predict how students were going to do in both of those cases. And what we hoped was that they would be aligned, right? Because the way assessment is supposed to work is we're supposed to understand the capacity of our students and get them in the courses that match that capacity, right? Where we're matching the skills that they have to the challenges of the classroom. So what we did is we just looked at this in English and math for starters. So we're going to have a little bit of difficult math. It's not very complicated. It's just logistic regression coefficients. Higher numbers mean stronger relationships, right? That's what you need to know. So first we're going to look at how to predict placement. How do students place at Long Beach City College? And we're going to look at the role of how they did on the California Standards Test in English and Language Arts, how they did in their 12th grade English class, and how they did in the rest of their classes in high school. And so to predict how students place, how they did on their last standardized test, incredibly powerful predictor, predicts almost everything. How they did in their 12th grade English had no relationship, zero relationship to how they placed, right? No relationship to how they placed. So you could ignore 12th grade English. How they did overall was somewhat related to placement. So what we want is something where the right half of this slide matches the left half. That means it's aligned and our placement system is functioning well. But that's not at all what we get. What you see is the standardized assessment predicts performance in English at Long Beach City College, but only slightly. And how they did in their last English course tells you a lot about how they do in an English course at Long Beach City College. It's a very strong relationship. And how they do across 4 years of courses is a very strong predictor of how students are going to do in English in college. So in math, similar type of picture. We're going to use the same types of things. California Standards Test result, their performance in their last math course, and their overall GPA. You can see how they did on their last standardized test. Very powerful predictor of placement, right? How they do on one standardized test tells you a lot about the next one. And again, you get a very different relationship, where the standardized test still tells you something, but not everything. And you get a lot of meaningful information about student capacity and their likelihood of performing well from looking at how they did in their last math class and how they do in all of their classes. And so this is the difficult summary, so try and keep up. This is going to be hard, so just everyone stay calm, just listen, here we go. Right? So what we're supposed to have is an assessment system where what predicts placement should also predict performance. But what we have is a system where previous standardized tests do a really good job of predicting subsequent standardized tests, but don't tell you very much about how students are going to do in your class. How students did in previous classrooms tell you a lot about how they're going to do in our classrooms, but not very much about how they're going to do on a standardized test. And more information about student capacity tells us more, right? That's really what we've supposed to have been doing in the California Community College for the last 30 years. Coming to a holistic, comprehensive understanding of student capacity so that we're placing them in the courses that appropriately challenge them. So that's what we did. We reimagined student capacity, so we designed our assessment around the variables that actually predicted performance. So we started in fall 2012. There's now 6 different districts covering 30 high schools. We reverse engineered that to generally largely overemphasize high school GPA, but also anything else that predicted performance. And then we placed students in the highest course where the predicted success rate was at least as high as the average success rate in the class. So we're not letting everyone in. We're looking for places where students are going to be average students or better and getting them to those courses. And then we built semester plans for them with those placements pre-populated. And so we get a very different picture than what we were seeing before. If you look at previously, there's a couple of comparison groups, first-time students overall, previous students from Long Beach Unified, and actually the students in this cohort that I'm going to talk about, all of them are consistently being placed at about 10 to 15% in transfer level English and math. But when you use the evidence of their capacity, what they've been able to do in high school, you get a very different picture of students' capacity to do the work. And so you dramatically change the placement and the trajectory of students by looking at the work that they've already done consistently over 4 years in high school. The first thing people ask when they see this is, well, you just let everyone in. Not true. Oops. All right, it stopped in that one. Basically what you see is in the first overall cohort, no significant difference between the students that are being let in by the alternative assessment. There's maybe a little bit of a difference, but it's not significant. By the third cohort, the students that are being let in by the evidence of their capacity are actually outperforming the students who are going through our developmental sequence by 10%. right? And all we've done is recognize and use the work that they've demonstrated, by which they've demonstrated the ability to do meaningful academic work. So these are two of my favorite all-time slides. I've done slides for since the beginning of PowerPoint when it really, really sucked. And these are two of my favorite. So this looks at 4 key early educational milestones: the completion of transfer level English and math, the completion of a second English class, which serves as the second requirement for a critical thinking class in the UCs, and the Chancellor's Office Behavioral Intent to Transfer Measure, which is completion of 12 or more transfer units and attempting transfer level English or math. And this is disaggregated by ethnicity, so you can see some pretty standard equity gaps. And the important thing to see here is the blue lines. The blue lines is roughly the highest performing demographic group for each of those metrics from the previous cohort. So what happens when we use the evidence of students' capacity? All right, there we go. What happens is virtually every demographic group is outperforming the highest performing group from the previous cohort. Everyone, with the exception of African Americans and the completion of transfer level math. That's still triple the completion of transfer level math. That's still amazing. But this gets to a very different understanding of what our students are able to do, right? It helps everyone. And we talked a little bit about this as being, earlier there was a question about this lifts everyone. Craig is going to talk later about other strategies that actually significantly close gaps as well. And so this is where I turn it over to Terrence.
All right, thank you very much, John. And Davis had attributed that last question of his session to me, and I can't take credit for that. Someone out there want to raise your hand and out yourself? Asking that wonderfully hard question? I can't see it anyway. But it wasn't me, it was one of you who asked that good question, so thank you very much. And I really appreciate that we had Clayton, a student, up here earlier, because I myself used to be a student. And in fact, in some ways, I'm still learning. And when, in my background, I had a lot of advantages going from high school to college. Both my parents teach college. I went to a college prep public high school. Went to UC Santa Cruz, home of the... Excellent, excellent. And so they took my transcript and brought me in. I was being processed, and they made me take a test in math. And in high school, I had completed trigonometry and pre-calculus. I got A's and B's, did all right. And they gave me this test, and then I went into the office, and the nice lady said, "Oh, you missed it by 2 points. You're going to have to take pre-calculus again." And I was crushed, actually. I felt like I wasn't worthy. But I also had a lot of social capital, and like Clayton, I questioned the system and I challenged it. And I said, "Are you sure?" And then I cried a little bit. And she let me in. And I took first semester calculus. I did very well. And second semester, I did excellent. And those are my literal grades because they didn't have grades at UCSC. That's what I really got. And the very first day of Calculus 1, because I was still like, how did I bomb that test? I thought I was ready. Very first moment, the professor stands up there and says, "Okay, as you all remember from pre-calculus, y equals f of x." Oh. That's what all that stuff was on the test, the f times x, because my high school didn't use functional notation. My college prep high school didn't use the same mathematical notation as the university, and the university didn't put that handy little reminder on top of the test. So that was my barrier. That was what was going to cause me to have to take a class that the taxpayers had already paid for that undermined my self-confidence potentially. And yet, because I had the social capital and the confidence and the shamelessness to get in, I was okay. But there's a lot of people that don't have that same background, and they're not necessarily going to take that challenge. And so you do find this disproportionality in remediation, and that you find when you look both at local and statewide levels that underrepresented minorities are more likely to be placed into remediation for a variety of reasons. And that's really not something that we're comfortable with, that we want to have continue. It really should be that students are judged upon valid measures of performance. And so I want to blame someone, right? So let's blame the high school for not teaching me that. Or let's blame the university for not looking at the transcript that I sent in. They already had it. They already knew what I did. Why did they not look at it? Blame myself. I didn't call my high school teacher and said, oh, by the way, teach functional notation. But blaming doesn't fix things. It doesn't get it done. What will get things done is if the high schools and the colleges actually communicated with each other and had a commonality about what is the language that we want to teach our students in various disciplines, so that what is taught in one level prepares students for the next level. This idea of alignment and direct articulation between segments, high school to college, community college to the university, create these seamless, clear pathways. That's what's going to help everybody. So that's a lot of what the multiple measures project is about. Some of the precursors started occurring back when I was working with CalPAS, and Davis's good friend, Pam Bergman, who was working for the Hewlett Foundation back then as a program officer, talked my boss into doing a project to look at all the high school and the college data and to look at the association between performance in high school and performance in college to inform articulation and alignment. And so my boss assigned the project to me. I brought in Craig and Eden Dahlstrom, and we did some work on that. And it was around the time in the Student Success Act. It was supposed to inform that a bit. It probably didn't much. It was a little sleepy, but John and his crew picked up on it, and they said, well, I want to replicate that, and I want to do something with it. So he called me up and said, I want a data set, and I said, oh, all right, I'm busy. I got other stuff to do, and you're not going to, do anything with it anyway. Nothing's going to come out of it, but I give them the data set. But because of that relationship between Long Beach City College and Long Beach Unified, they were able to engage with the data and change policy and do something good and meaningful for the students. And things really started taking off. So then another boss of mine at the RP group, Kathy Booth, said, oh, this is great stuff. We should replicate it. We should get a lot of other colleges to do this work. Because what John and his crew had done is not just an analysis, not just worked with the faculty and the staff and collectively create this change, they'd also created an infrastructure that researchers could use to do this analysis locally, to capture the local variation and to validate the work, the independent replication to make sure that was happening. And because the RP group is not just a research group, it's fundamentally a professional development group, we had the STEPS project where we enabled a group of colleges to do their own analysis locally. And that took this project another step down the road because a couple of colleges also didn't just do the analysis, they also started applying the multiple measures and doing the hard implementation work, like Bakersfield and Sierra College. And the implementation part, that's the hard part. It's easy to do the analysis and to say, okay, this is the strategy we want to do. This is what we want to employ. But in order to actually process all these high school transcripts, you're going to have to hire extra people. You're going to have to reprogram your data system. It's going to take a lot of back office infrastructure work to implement this. And to help with that, now as part of the multiple measures, as part of the Common Assessment Initiative, there's the multiple measures component, and we're part of the multiple measures work group that is helping to do some of the analysis, bring in the high school information and see how can we actually utilize that information in the context of a complete common assessment system that has testing but also utilizes high school information. And there's quite a large number of colleges, and we've got some URLs to check out. And we're just a couple of members of the team. It's a very large team because it's a large project and a lot of work. And as John was mentioning, the work at Long Beach involved hundreds of people. And at this point, this multiple measures work involves probably thousands of people, really. Everyone in this room is part of it as well, just by being here. And so we're taking a look at the relationship between high school performance and college performance, and looking at the predictive validity, really focusing on trying to predict success in various levels of college courses throughout the English, math, ESL, and reading sequence. And providing a lot of statewide support to help with the professional development component to make sure that people understand the models and can replicate the models locally. And when there are changes in information available, that they can incorporate new data elements into assessment and advising systems, such as non-cognitive measurements or the new tests that are coming out of the K-12. So there's no more California standards tests. Now you've got the Smarter Balanced assessments. That's a whole new set of tests to incorporate into future models. And then one of the most important things is a data warehouse and tool development, because it's a lot of work to establish one-on-one data exchanges with your local K-12, and there's an effort to centralize that at a state level so that everyone has access to that, so that you don't have a barrier if you're a smaller college, for example, and your IT director doubles as the volleyball coach, which happens at some colleges. And we've got about roughly 40% of the community colleges in this slide, actually, John, I think, brought these numbers in, and it scares me. That's a lot. And so that's where we're doing a lot of piloting and a lot of testing and a lot of validation to make sure that these models are actually holding up and that they're going to be correct. So there's this constant evaluation and assessment and tweaking of the models to make sure that we're ourselves on the right pathway. So what have we come up with? So in terms of taking this high school and college information, we did a lot of statistical work. We threw a wide variety of models at it: logistic regression, linear regression. We looked at support vector machines and neural networks and gradient basis models and all kinds of good fun, and settled on decision trees. And for you geeks out there, they're very nice because they handle both continuous and categorical, variable, handle nonlinearities, and are also, unlike some coefficients that you'll see later from Craig, they're very easy to understand to a lay audience, because it gives you a bunch of if-then statements that you'll see here. So some of the most powerful predictors, as we saw from John, were your cumulative high school GPA. And you come up with fairly simple rule sets that come out of this modeling, such as for transfer level English. If your cumulative high school GPA by the 12th grade was 2.6 or higher, then you were predicted to be successful in transfer level English at the community college. So that's basically, if you're like a B- student on average, then you're probably going to be successful. And there's a couple of interesting implications about the high school GPA being so prominent. One is that it's not talking about your skill in a specific content area. Your cumulative GPA, it really is mapping your ability to be consistently successful in an academic setting over a sustained period of time with a wide variety of teachers and a wide variety of disciplines. It's really tapping at your ability to be a student more than your ability to specifically write an essay or factor a polynomial or those types of specific content skills. Yet the specific content skills did appear in these models in certain instances. For example, here, let's say you weren't as strong overall academically, but if you had gotten a halfway decent grade in your English course, then that also was predictive of you being successful, in this case, in one level below transfer. So in this case, this rule set was a combination of your cumulative GPA and your grade in a particular course. And similar in math, your prediction of success in college algebra, either you were a very strong student, almost a B+ better consistently, or you were a little bit less strong, but you had completed pre-calculus C or better. Now, this rule is good and bad. In my personal opinion, it's good in the sense that it gives multiple ways for a student to demonstrate proficiency based on their background. However, if you already completed pre-calculus C or better, I mean, you're really essentially repeating a very similar level. And if there was direct articulation with high schools, then students could move right into the appropriate course instead of repeating it. And in some of the rules, we even had some of the test scores coming in as being relevant. So here, a slightly lower GPA, but you do very well in a standardized test. And so there's specific instances where standardized tests can help. If, for example, you had some difficulties that challenged your GPA, but you're able to demonstrate content proficiency, that was able to indicate that you might be successful in this course. Some other variables up there that were of some importance that are interesting that I'll mention. One is delay. And there are some instances where the amount of time between high school and college had some impact. Anecdotally, a lot of people have mentioned to us that that delay should have a great effect. That if you're out of school for 2 or 3 years, that's going to, you're going to have to go back and retake courses. And it turns out from, Cog Sci that you actually wind up forgetting things very quickly. So that's more like 2 weeks after your class, you basically forgot everything. So delay really didn't show up as having a big effect. And that's where a lot of the co-requisite models and additional supports are really helpful. So what are the impacts? So right now on the data set we're working with, this was for the sample that we're working with. These are the transfer placement rates in English and math. But theoretically, if these new models were applied, you see numbers very similar to what Long Beach saw. So these are the theoretical gains in the percent of students placing into transfer level math and English if we made use of the high school transcript information available for students who were transitioning from high school to college. With no major cost in success rates. And that's the key, is that, and these teachers, they're not, and at Long Beach and other colleges have implemented this, the teachers, they're not teaching differently. They're maintaining the curriculum, they're maintaining the rigor. And so even though we're seeing more students going into transfer level, we're not predicting a big hit on success rates. And there are some equity implications. So taking some of those same data, these again are the percent of students placing into transfer level English broken out by some major demographic groups that we have. And theoretically applying these rules increases the transfer rates for everybody. But it's, I think someone mentioned earlier, it's a rising tide approach. So it doesn't necessarily solve the equity gap issue. It's part of the solution, it's a tool, but it in and of itself does not completely fix the issue. And in particular, one of the issues that you see, and let me show it for math here, similar pattern. And one of the challenges is that the more that you rely on high school transcripts, then you're going back and you're seeing, well, how many folks in high school were able to complete Algebra 2 or higher? And that rate varies in a very similar fashion to what you see here. So then it brings the conversation down into earlier grade levels to help students have more supported pathways earlier on so that they can get up to that Algebra 2 and above level by the time that they hit college. And a final complication I'll bring up about placement is that these placements, I've indicated a couple of changes are happening, such as changes in the K-12. We've got the Common Core curriculum with a brand new standardized test. That's going to be changing the students' skills and knowledge that they have when they come in. And there's also some radical changes in our curricular sequences. There's some challenges to the idea that I guess today was the first day I heard about the circles of hell reference to the developmental sequence, which is an interesting metaphor. And some folks are taking a different approach to it, and instead of having 3 or 4 or 5 circles of hell, they're trying to make it one circle of slightly unpleasant waiting room until you get to the transfer level. And so I'm going to have Craig tell us about that unpleasant waiting room.
That's very funny. It's not even all that unpleasant, actually. It's pretty nice. A lot of support for your affective needs in that waiting room. It's one of the principles of the California Acceleration Project. So I'm going to talk about the California Acceleration Project results. They were large and robust. It says it all. There were a lot of hypotheses that we explicitly set out to evaluate and consider in the design of this research project, such as, well, okay, so acceleration has showing some promise, but it couldn't possibly work for all students. What about students who place 4 levels below? What about, does it work for students of all backgrounds? Does it work for students of any gender? So we looked at those kinds of things, and in fact, we couldn't find a single group of students for whom acceleration was not resulting in better outcomes as we defined outcomes, which was throughput rate, which as you'll recall is the proportion of students who complete the college level or the transfer level course at the end of the remedial sequence. So we also did an implementation study as part of this, and we found that there were variations. You couldn't just do anything and call it acceleration and get the effects. So it did matter how you implemented. And you'll see some of those effects here. I guess this is the slide that you were referring to as being difficult to understand. These are odds ratios, and what they're showing is the odds of completing the transfer level course for students who went through the acceleration pathway relative to students who didn't. Holding constant about 13 different major statistical control variables, including concurrent GPA, whether they had a diploma or not, whether they had any disability or not, ethnicity, gender, prior attempts, prior successes, prior failures in the sequences, so a number of things. And we saw that students in the English accelerated pathway were about 1.5 times more likely to complete. But we also noticed that there was that implementation matters thing going on, and that when the acceleration pathway was just that one waiting room before transfer level work, so that there was one level of remediation that articulated directly with the transfer level course, freshman comp, then the effects were much more substantial. So students in that kind of a program or that kind of a pathway were 2.3 times more likely to complete. And then math, we saw this really just tremendous impact, and this was a statistics pathway. So this pathway did not require the completion of Algebra 2. It required the completion of a pre-stats course, which fed directly into statistics. And those students were fabulously successful in statistics with a specially redesigned pre-stats course. So these are the not raw percentages. These are what's called marginal means or regression estimated, but they give you a sense of the comparison between students in the traditional pathway who were placed at 4 levels below and their odds of ever completing transfer level work in English, and then the odds of the students in the accelerated pathway. So it's not that all students who were placed 4 levels below, if you put them in acceleration, it's not that they were all successful, but it's that you just enhance their odds of ever being successful. And that's an important thing to realize. So you're making the best use of their time. You're not guaranteeing success, but you're getting them there much more quickly, and many more of them are getting there. And then these are the marginal means for math, and you can see the differences are just huge. And what we noticed when we looked at this, and I'm not sure if we have that slide. Okay, well here's this is a slide for IVC, and this is the equity slide. So we noticed that acceleration, when you just look at, you go back to the raw data and you just look at what's happening in terms of the demographics of the students who are going through acceleration, there's a tremendously powerful equity effect that happens. So we're going from, and now this is my college, so we're using, this is kind of, that's 2 levels below, that's 3 levels below. And then EXP, this was when the course was experimental, it's now been mainstreamed. This was the experimental, 1 level below, directly articulating to transfer level English class. And then we have some of the major ethnic groups. So there's the overall rate, there's the Asian American group, which was the top performing group, and the African American group, which was the lowest performing group. And you can see the huge gap, right? That's the achievement gap right there. 23% versus 58% in the traditional sequence. In the accelerated sequence, that difference virtually disappears. I mean, there's still a small gap there, but it's been greatly reduced, and both groups are doing better than they were in the traditional sequence. So it's just a fantastic equity advancing strategy. And now, whoa, just don't wave this thing too hard or it'll advance.
So we're going to step outside of California for the remainder of this a little bit, just to give you pull in a couple of different approaches to acceleration. So Davis already talked a little bit about co-requisite acceleration. There's a couple of fantastic sources for more information. There's a great review paper by Don Coleman last year, and a very nice overview that just came out from Complete College America this year. One of the things that Terrence referenced is there are bit.ly links to all of these things throughout, and at the end I'll take you back to a link that will get you to this presentation so that you can see it whenever you like. But the co-requisite acceleration builds on powerful work by folks like the Community College of Baltimore County and others, where you mainstream students who are in developmental education. So students who would have been one level below in English are placed directly into what for them is college level, what for us is transfer level. But they're put in that course with support that comes from the same instructor that's built to be just in time. And there's a variety of different models for doing this that have grown since then. But that's the idea, that you're getting students directly into the transfer level or gateway course, and you're doing it with concurrent support rather than sequential support. And so I really recommend that you read these papers. It really starts to highlight what some of those things are. The ALP, the Accelerated Learning Program, has a great website as well. But what do we see when we do that? So when you look across, Don Coleman looked at 4 different colleges that brought this to scale and looked at what happens when you do this at scale for English. And so this just gives you the percentage of students who start in a Dev Ed 1 level below course and what their likelihood of completing the gateway course normally would be within a couple of years. And then they use the same time frame, and look what happens when you put those same students, or very similar students, into the transfer level course with support. And you basically just about double the percentage of students who actually complete the course, right? So by making the support concurrent rather than sequential, the number of students who successfully complete the transfer level course is dramatically improved. And it also has substantial equity impacts, very similar to what you see in the California Acceleration Project. This is pretty noisy. What? 42, is there another one? Oh, there it is, nice. Okay, so the blue is the baseline again, right? And the diagonals are blacks and Hispanics broken out separately from white students. And you can see the substantial equity gap in blue. And one of the things that happens is everyone is helped by the co-requisite model, but the equity gap closes, right? So it's not just helping everyone. It's not just a rising tide. It's actually closing gaps that many of us often spend millions of dollars to try and close with far less impact. And then the recent report from Complete College America, I'm just going to show you a couple of examples from Tennessee and West Virginia that was done with 2-year public community colleges like us. So you can see the national average that they provided for completion of transfer level courses amongst students that start in developmental education. And you can see both of these folks start within the range, a little bit higher in English for the national average, a little bit lower in mathematics. But they experience incredible gains, right? Completely different understanding of student capacity. And these students with the concurrent support are now have completed the college level work in that discipline when in some cases only 10% of them normally would have. And they're doing it in far less time. So Davis touched on this. The national sample and the comparison samples looks at how many students completed in 2 years. So make sure you're giving them enough time. These other samples from Tennessee and West Virginia, this is in the first semester, right? So it's a quarter of the time that students are doing this, and they're getting, many more of them are getting much farther. And then there's another approach that a variety of people have taken, including some people from Butte College. So, woo, Butte College in the house, right? So Leslie Henson and Katie Hearn have a nice paper called Let Them In that talks about this approach. The state of Virginia, their community college system, has taken this approach as well. And it's very straightforward. It assumes that more students can do the work than we normally are and just lets more students in. So at Butte College, when they switched from one placement test to another, they accidentally set the cut scores lower to double the number of students that were going to be let into college level English. Right? They realized it, they let it ride, and what you see is quite a substantial difference. So this looks at, prior to that change, the percentage of students who successfully complete transfer level English in the first year. And they're just letting more students in. right? And they looked very carefully, does this change the success rates? And when they looked at faculty that taught before and after the change, the difference in success rates was less than 1%, right? So it's not that you're just letting people in and they're being passed through, right? And again, you see the same type of pattern where the highest performing group in the previous year, every group is at or above that performance level, right? That's the power of allowing us to believe that more of our students have the capacity to do this work than we currently believe. You have the state of Virginia that did this in mathematics, amongst many other things that they did in mathematics, but one of the key things is they decided to let more students directly into transfer level mathematics. And you can see, so they placed almost double or more than double the students into college level math, and they more than doubled the percentage of students who complete college level math in the first year. In English, they did two things. They let more students in. So this is, again, another little bit of a noisy slide. So this is the percentage of students pre-reform assigned into college English, and 10% were allowed into a co-requisite class. So they increased the percentage of students let directly in by 15%, and they more than doubled the number of co-rec students. So they have 81% of their system is taking a transfer level English course in the first year. Right? That's the change. And what you see is some pretty big differences in the outcomes. So before you got about 28% of students completing, now you have 48%. Almost double. They almost have half of their students completing in the system, completing transfer level English in the first year now. So what do you see across all these different things? Right? Across all these different opportunities for us to reimagine student capacity. You see us doubling to quintupling the number of students who are completing the transfer level course in that sequence, right, in that discipline. That's enormous. Comparable or higher success rates. It works across demographic groups and placements, right? So it's not that you're just helping the students that are close. It's not that this works only for some types of students. Right, one of the really remarkable set of things that Terrence and Craig did in their CAP acceleration paper is they looked across all the variety of different students that we serve in the California community colleges, all the different potential vulnerabilities that you might be able to identify. That helps everyone. Everyone. Tremendous equity implications that we've discussed. And so what you see overall is that evidence-based placement assessment, placement, and redesign of developmental education provides a true, a clear, a powerful on-ramp to the programs that we design, the things that we want students to do, and to college-level work, right? The more of the students are ready, and if we provide them with that trailhead, they'll be much more likely to succeed. So we want to give you kind of a sense of what this might mean, right? Typically what you see is on average, some students save far more, some students don't save very much. But on average, you save 1 to 2 semesters of developmental education on average. That the evidence suggested and that students' performance subsequently demonstrates that they didn't need to take. Right? The direct costs of that are big. Right? For the students, you're talking about a 4 or 5 unit class, somewhere to $200 and $250 per student per semester plus books. For the state, you can kind of get to an estimate using non-resident tuition. You're talking about another $1,000 or so per semester per student. But that's not the big cost. That hurts pocketbooks. But the big cost is the opportunity cost. Right? That's 1 to 2 semesters. That's up to a year of students' lives that they're losing. Right? That they're not getting to productively spend in education with us, or they're not getting to move earlier into the workforce. So that has real impact. The median salary for some college is $30,000 a year, but they're not losing that year, right? They're losing the last year, right? That's often our highest paid year, or the opportunity to retire early, right? The thing that we all aspire to spend more time with our family or our kids, they lose that. So, sense of scale. The Bureau of Labor and Statistics estimated that the Great Recession of 2008 cost the state of California about 1 million people lost out of the productive workforce of the state for a year or more. We have 2.4 to 2.5 million California community college students that we are losing out of our productive workforce for up to a year. Right? That's the scale we're talking about. That's the loss that we are arriving at by underestimating the true capacity of our students. So I want to encourage you to think carefully. Well, I know we have lots of work to do. It's very complicated, but it's also urgent work. We have 500,000 new students that start in our system every year, right? For those students, this is their one chance to start. This is it. So I strongly encourage you to consider how quickly some of these things might be able to be implemented, given the variety of research and evidence that we have today. So,
User error.
Is there someone that could control this for me? I guess I'm out. All right, okay. Anyway, so this is good. So this has that last slide with all our contact information at the end. So, there we go. Okay. So also you'll note, we only give out their email addresses, but that is my direct cell phone. So we work very hard to support colleges that are doing any of this kind of work at any time. So I take calls pretty much most of the time, within realm of when I'm not sleeping. Could you put up the very first slide again? So that's it. So this is the deck, HTTP, bit.ly, MMAP, pathways, right? Actually, the pathways may be all caps. So that's the deck. All of the links are live, so it takes you to all the references that we talked about. So we want to make sure that you're not just trusting us, that you actually have the opportunity to review all of this evidence with your local teams. So thank you. I think we have some time for questions.
If anybody can hear me, sorry. I'm a STEM faculty member, so my question would be related to using multiple measures for placement into the STEM specific courses like chemistry and biology, and if you guys have any data on that to share.
No.
So,
well,
yeah.
No. Our work as the MAP research team focused on English, math, ESL, and reading, but I can tell that these guys want to talk about some stuff anyway.
Well, we're looking into that at my college, Cabrillo, right now, and because right now we do allow in chemistry, high school chemistry, 2-count as a prereq, but we're looking into that to see if that's still valid after some significant curricular changes. And then biology has a slightly different prerequisite, and so we're working with them as well to look at the evidence and look at aligning it to see the extent to which the high school chemistry is sufficiently aligned with the college biology and chemistry. But it's not part of the multiple measures work. Yeah, we're actually piloting that right now at Cabrillo and testing that. So. Yeah, and interesting, that's also not part of the California initiative in terms of the Common Assessment Initiative, which I asked about because I was doing this work and I was hoping, well, maybe someone else is doing it. I don't have to. But it's not in the Common Assessment Framework right now.
So just the general thing that I would say to just slightly elaborate the no is wherever we've looked, because the no is correct, we don't have the data, but wherever we've looked, what we see again and again is that the evidence that students' performance in high school is more predictive than virtually any of the tests that we use, right? That's the reality. And so I think that should resonate with most folks that have worked with any educators anywhere, right? That what really matters is how students have performed in classrooms. That tells you a lot about how they're going to do in subsequent classrooms. Now, that could be different in chemistry and biology and physics, I don't know. But wherever we've looked at that, we see that again and again.
So it's worth following up on, and perhaps we could even talk with Mallory Newell about, seeing if we can get that into phase 3 of MAP.
We'll definitely look into it.
So thank you for bringing that up. Rachel? Just shout.
Oh, you have a mic?
Here you go.
Sorry if I'm jumping the line.
Bachelor number 2. No, just
Only one problem.
So my so my question is, the work that was done with the students that were one level below transfer, they had placed one level below transfer, that were placed in a co-requisite rather than a prerequisite class. My question is, did that also work for students who had come up through the sequence? In other words, students who had, say, started 2 levels below and had moved up to the level just before transfer? Or was it only done with students who actually placed into the 1 level below?
That's an excellent question. I don't actually know the answer to that. My suspicion is that it's just the placement, but I'm not entirely sure.
So with the CCA paper, it's implemented in a number of states. So it's probably done differently in different states would be my other kind of general not really knowing answer. So you probably have it both ways out there. Some places where you've got, so for instance with California Acceleration Project, we saw students entering acceleration after having been in the sequence. So they didn't have to just place in. And it didn't really make a meaningful, that didn't matter. In terms of their ultimate success, it didn't detract from it in any way. So, you know, as much as we can kind of draw an analogy from that, then I think the co-requisite work would be analogous.
And I like long walks on the beach.
Okay, my question is, did you see much variation in GPAs from individual high schools?
Yeah, it's a good question, and that's been, we didn't really touch on it that long because we had a lot to talk about. And one of the biggest questions we get is about grade inflation, variability among high schools. And looking at the state level data, we've not really seen a lot of evidence of grade inflation. If you look at the statewide cumulative GPA, it's a nice bell curve. And it's centered around 2.3, 2.4, so about a C+. And so that is heartening in terms of the validity of the GPA. The variability among high schools and colleges, we've been developing these models on statewide data, and at this point, initially leaving it to enabling the local folks to do local replications to look at that variability. And that might be part of our phase 3 to really dig into that, but we haven't dug into that variability at this point in the project. But it is an important thing to be aware of, that there will be local variation.
Right. It was one of the things we looked very carefully at Long Beach because there's a pretty broad distribution of SES within the city. You have some of the lowest SES census tracts in the entire United States and some relatively upper middle class areas. So we looked very carefully at that. And you do see some differences in GPA, but what you don't see is a difference in the predictive utility of GPA. So GPA continues to predict in the same way, independent of which high school you came from, right? And that for us is really kind of what matters. It's not whether or not your GPA is higher or lower, it's whether or not it continues to have the same relationship with performance. Sure.
In your question on, or in your data on closing the skills gaps amongst African Americans as well as Asian Americans, can you define what you defined or used as co-requisites as well as support in closing those skills gaps?
Do you guys want to talk about the acceleration project first?
I didn't quite get the co-requisites that.
Well, so you're asking what additional support is being provided to close the equity gaps?
That is correct.
Right, yeah, one of the main ones, or at least my opinion of one of the main ones in the California Acceleration Project work is the just-in-time remediation. So that identifying an issue during the class and making sure that students go to tutoring or have other real-time support. Plus, there's a lot of faculty professional development and collaboration to help with the delivery of the pedagogy. I think those are some of the main ones for me.
Yeah, I'd just point out that the California Acceleration Project was designed to not include any additional support. So there's no mandated co-requisite for the California Acceleration Project, which does effectively close those equity gaps. But there is a lot of professional development, and there are 5 principles of pedagogy for accelerated classrooms, including just-in-time remediation, enhanced level of challenge, and enhanced level of support, So, directing the remedial work towards targeting the work that's going to be done at the transfer level or the college level class, and support for affective needs as well, so like greater empathy. And so that's all covered in the full evaluation and on I think in the CAP materials, the various CAP materials that are out there on the CAP website. Great question, thanks. And then as far as co-recs?
Yeah, so in the co-recs, the way that those courses were designed originally by the Community College of Baltimore County was that you have a smaller set of students from the students that are taken with the co-rec are a subset of that class, of the transfer level class. And they're being taught by the same instructor, and they're getting instruction that's basically preparatory instruction for what's going to happen in the transfer level course. So you have the course, you have the support that's happening concurrently that's tightly integrated with the actual transfer level course. To my knowledge, they don't do a lot of equity-specific activities. It's pedagogy-specific activities. And then the way that it's been implemented broadly, states and colleges have taken a wide variety of approaches. Some are using things more like structured tutoring and things like that, but more of them are really trying to think about how to integrate a course that goes along with it that's supporting the primary course that, the gateway course that you're trying to get students through. But to my knowledge, they're not using equity gaps specific closing strategies in developing that. They're trying to help all students successfully complete the gateway course.
And I think that's a key point, is that what we're seeing, and these are not at their core initially set out to be equity gap closing strategies. That's more of a consequence that emerges out of these initiatives.
We have an online streaming question for you.
Okay.
What single intervention or strategy best addresses equity gaps per research? What single intervention or strategy
that's not a high-stakes gotcha question at all.
It's like asking a parent to pick between their kids.
Well, I gotta go with...
Which one of your kids is your favorite?
It's a Sophie's choice. I'm going to go with the California Acceleration Project as far as that's the most clear, evidence-based, wide scale. When we did the evaluation, we evaluated it at 16 colleges, so there are a variety of implementations, and really clear equity-enhancing effects for acceleration in math and in English.
I think I generally agree. I would just say I refuse to answer the question, because you wouldn't want to do it. So one of the powerful things that you see from all of these things is that each one of them is taking one approach at a very similar problem. And that to say that you would only choose one when you could do more than one would be foolish, right? So if you have the ability to do the California Acceleration Project locally, accelerated, redesigned developmental ed, why wouldn't you want to make sure that the students were placed more accurately into the various levels at the same time? Yeah. So I refuse the question.
Yeah. Well, look at what College of the Canyons is doing with their personalized accelerated learning. They're moving towards a statistics pathway, which is accelerated with a co-requisite, so it's like double accelerated, and it's like, that's very exciting to me. Just turbocharge a student's success in their movement on the pathway.
And if you have the interaction between the high schools and the colleges and have those articulated pathways, then that's addressing the fundamental remediation problem, and then you can concentrate on earlier issues within K-12 and making sure that those issues are addressed.
Hi. I had a question about the multiple measures assessment project and looking at some of the equity indicators, not for purposes of placement, but seeing long-term success. Have you included demographic or the non-cognitive variables in there, and then using that as an identification for where equity funds could be leveraged?
So in one note, in building the models, we did not include demographics as predictors in building the models. So we only used academic performance and then looked post hoc at how the models would work on different demographic groups. So that's one point I think we didn't mention. And it does, but because it does have at least a rising tide effect and at least proportionally does help mitigate some of the equity gaps, in my mind, it does seem like if you're building a comprehensive equity strategy, that would definitely be part of it.
Yeah, and John and I have debated this point about the sort of the relative gain is greatest for the groups that have the lowest historical performance, but it doesn't seem to visibly close. Actually, the point gap seems to open a little bit for some of those comparisons from lower performing groups to higher historically performing groups. Yet, if you do that trick enough, if you get greater relative gain, if you do it, you know, with multiple measures, and then you do it with acceleration, and then you do it with, you know, I don't know, reading across the curriculum or whatever the next big thing is that shows promise with moving students, some of these pathways reforms, for instance, then eventually you're getting to closing the gap. So even if one thing, I don't think you're going to find out one thing that will close all gaps for all people, but when you're seeing progress, it's worth bringing that together, you know, in synthesis with your other efforts.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Craig Hayward, John Hetz, and Terrence Willits. And once again, from Bakersfield College Cheer, it's time to stretch with Coach Heather Foss.
Wait, don't stand just yet. How was lunch? Did you guys enjoy it? Yeah. Good. We are going to stretch. We're not going to exercise, but if it's a little much.
Friends and attendees, this is not a break. We'll be stretching and the program will resume shortly.
There is no snacks. I'm sorry. Okay, what I'd like right now is for all of you to sit up really nice and straight. Great posture within your seat, please. And this is not good posture, slumping your booty. Good posture is sticking the booty out. I want you to turn in your chair to the right. And you're just going to kind of twist your spine just a little bit. If that's a little too much, don't go as far. You can give your partner a shoulder rub while you're there. I don't have a partner. I thought Sonia was joining me. And switch to the other side. One thing to remember about stretching is just as good as exercising. You need it every single day in order to get your oxygen flowing, your blood flowing right, and you have to warm your bodies up in order for you to not be tight. Let's take a big stand. So if you think of taffy, who likes saltwater taffy? Perfect. If taffy is hard, or if it's not warmed up, what does it do? It breaks. Same thing with your muscles. If your muscles are not warmed up enough, you're going to get more prone to injury and you're going to get hurt. You have to warm them up in order for them to be overstretched. Put your arms right here in the front. Push your shoulders forward. You're going to kind of make this elongated piece with your spine. All right, now make a big, huge arm circle behind. Don't hit your partners. Good. Now we're going to do some shoulder rolls forward. Another really good, important thing to remember with stretching is hydration throughout your day. A lot of us have really stressful jobs, or sometimes we just sit down and do nothing all day, and that's no bueno. And go backwards. So like I said about overstretching your muscles, if you're sitting all day long and you feel sore and you're like, why am I so tight? That's because you're not doing anything. You have to keep your body warm. Spending 10 minutes every morning when you wake up with a bottle of water and stretching will literally change your life. Arm across. If you can't go that far, it's okay. I'm related to Gumby somehow, I don't know. We haven't met yet. And switch. And those that are at home watching the live feed, you should be up doing this as well. I know your colleagues can text you. I've been hearing about it all morning. All right, and if you can't go all the way down to the ground, you're very limited on space. I want you to grab the front of your chair, and you're going to bend slightly, stick the booty out. I don't mean like this. I mean like this. Who's seen the movie Flashdance? You guys seen Flashdance? Perfect. Okay, I want you to bend one knee. And switch. 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 And again. Again. And again. All right, standing forward. We're almost done. Last exercise. Put one arm up in the air and just reach over to the side as far as you can.
Do we have to smile?
You can smile. Beautiful smile. I think you stretch better if you smile. Stretching makes you happier, releases lots of really good endorphins within your brain to make you feel better. So why not? And switch. All right, good. Last thing, let's warm up those muscles just one more time. I want you to literally flash dance in your spot. I'm joking.
She's a maniac.
Thank you guys very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, BC Cheers, Heather Foss. And once again, oh, don't hold the applause, it's Dr. Matthew Garrett.
Good stretch. That was a great panel discussion. I know I learned quite a bit. I'm horrible at numbers. I'm not a numbers guy. A lot of it was over my head. I'm a history guy. But I love the metaphor because that I could follow, right? That we're clearing the brush, that we're finding the trailhead, we're exposing it to the students. And that there's different mechanisms for that. And of course, the heavy focus on multiple placement measures. I know here at BC, we've been starting to do that. I keep hearing Janet Folks in my ear telling me how effective it is. That our students are doing much better than they were previously, and it actually works. That's one way that we're getting at clearing the brush and exposing the trailhead. Another thing we've been doing here, I noticed, I think it was Terrence that said he had an advantage. Do you remember he said that he had social capital? He knew to challenge the system. He had a little advantage. And I think a lot of our students, they don't have that advantage, right? And much of our previous discussion, it came back to equity. I wonder, how can we provide social capital to all of our students? And I thought about here at BC, another program we've been doing that's part of our Pathways efforts, is the Summer Bridge. Our Summer Bridge, I'm sure someone will talk about it more later, takes students, incoming freshmen, and we recruit them for a 3-day intense class where they learn everything about college. They learn where the cafeteria is. They learn how to communicate with their professors. They learn email etiquette, how to block out their schedule, that for every hour in class, you need a couple hours of study time. We explain and we help to acclimate them to college. I asked this earlier this week to some of my students, had anyone participated in Bridge? And some of them said, yes, they did. I said, what did you get out of it? They said, I got confidence. I think that's their word for social capital. They learn to understand how to work the system a little better, how to use it to their advantage, how to get their needs met. Because when they come to us, they're a blank slate. They don't know. I forget that myself. I'm used to students come and students go, and I just assume they know things that they don't know. I think the best part about Bridge, maybe, is that the faculty who teach it, I got a chance teaching a couple sections. It reminded me how innocent they are. They don't know. They sometimes I don't trust them at all. They're sneaky, but other times, you know, I didn't know that they didn't understand that. My wife, when she went to college, she's the oldest of her siblings, and she enrolled in classes, and right before school, she had a surgery, and they cut through her stomach, and, you know, obviously the muscles were all destroyed, and she was enrolled in a PE class, which obviously she could not do. So she struggled, and she wouldn't quit because she's not a quitter, and I don't know, she probably didn't do very well in that class, but no one ever explained to her that you can drop a class. This basic knowledge that they don't have, they can gain through programs like Summer Bridge. And so it's a real opportunity for us to expand their social capital, is that the word, the term? So as we move on today, I hope we can continue to look for programs and opportunities to help empower our students so that they can better find the trailhead and just move seamlessly into the system and onto that, earlier we called it a K-16 highway, right, without any potholes. Let's continue to flesh that out. And as we move in that direction, we're going to bring out Jeff Archibald, who is a Mount SAC professor, also the academic vice president there, who's leading the Bridge, the Pathway program there. Jeff.
Good afternoon. I had a good laugh. I don't know about you. I would watch a weekly series with those guys. They were great. And I think our next panel is great too. While we're talking about pathways, it's interesting. 2 weeks ago today, I was lost in San Antonio, emotionally, go with me. And Dr. Christian came up and said, we have to get our colleges together, the 3 colleges that are working. We have to share the exciting things that we're already doing with our colleagues in California and really talk about a lot of the Pathways initiatives. And as we talked with some of the folks from Bakersfield and Irvine and other colleges at the Pathways Institute in San Antonio, 2 weeks ago, we realized there are a lot of things that we are already doing to get students on pathways. Some of them still need to go up to scale, but there's a lot of great work that we've been doing that we can celebrate, that we can use as models as we begin to undertake some of these transformative changes in how we do business and how we serve our students. And that's what this next panel is going to be focused around today, is sort of, as we've been putting it all week, where rubber meets the road. And so my pathway has taken me from San Antonio back here to Bakersfield for the first time ever, which is great. And we're going to talk today, it's been wonderful, and we're going to talk today about some of the sort of where the rubber meets the road. Now, as a preface to this, one of the things I always say is that changing educational policy and practice, if your college is like mine, it's like steering an aircraft carrier with an oar. It doesn't turn quickly or easily, and so when you can show successes and when you can take programs that have success and data to prove that they've been successful, it's a lot easier to convince your colleagues. It's a lot easier to make those changes happen when you can say, I've done this, I've been through it, and I have the data to prove it works. And I think it's been a great progression today to go from sort of the concept of transformative change at the beginning to, you just heard a great presentation on the research, and now you're going to hear from 5 different panelists who have been on the leading front of change at their colleges, who have been working to implement some of these pathways style reforms and can actually talk to you about the blood, sweat, and I promise tears that all came as these projects were brought forward, but also the successes that has represented for their colleges, for their departments, and for their students. So I'd like to bring our panel out, and I'll introduce them one by one as they come up today to talk about their individual projects. Our first speaker today is actually here at Bakersfield College. It's Dr. Janet Folks. She's been teaching in the biology department at Bakersfield for 22 years, but she's also been extremely involved in campus leadership and leadership at the statewide academic senate level, being heavily involved in the Basic Skills Initiative and the CCC scorecard. She's going to talk to you today about the new student intake process here at Bakersfield College, and so please give a warm welcome to Dr. Janet Folks.
Hi, I hope I can make this tricky thing work here. All right, if any of you read the Sacramento Bee, some of you I know are up north, there was a great article on Saturday that talked about why aren't people graduating from colleges, and look at the 4-year CSU graduation rate. These are the top students in the state, 12 to 14% in 4 years. Exclusive colleges do better. UCLA and UC Berkeley do pretty good. University of Phoenix, not so great, especially for the price tag. And each year that these students have to go beyond to complete their degree is thousands or tens of thousands of dollars more. But this is not a new concern for us. So I just want you guys to think back. We did IMPACT in 2000. We did LDTP, we've been doing basic skills, we've done CID, we're doing transfer degrees. The community college is on top of this. This is not new for us. What's new is that we've got some really amazing data, whoops, and it is fast, that my researcher friends just shared with you. This is something that we did sort of as a project as BC started looking at the cafeteria model versus the guided pathways model, and we printed something out. I went through it and sort of changed some of the wording on it. I'm not going to read through it, but I want you to know that when we first started several years ago, knowing SSSP was coming, we talked about mapping out the pathways as they were, and then we started talking about new student intake. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about. We look at BC students as coming into a pipeline, entry, progression, completion, employment. And these are our special group of students that I've been tracking in my Making It Happen program that are first-gen, first-time college students, low SES, really the students that we know if we can serve them, we can serve anybody. And these are what the students have been selecting as their completion goals. So I want you to see that there is a remarkable trend here that last year in 2015, out of the 1,600 students I'm tracking, 96% said they wanted a CTE degree, a certificate, an AA, or transfer, and many of them wanted multiples of those. They want to know when they complete. So they have the choice of saying discover new careers. 1% said that. So I want you to know it's different than when I went to school, maybe when you went to school too. As a result, because we know that they want to get to the end, if you look at these cohorts of students that have come in, and you can see that we didn't do anything for them between 2011 and 2013. There were about 326 of them. We let them sign up for English and math classes as they wanted, and we started tracking in our Achieve the Dream data how well they did in getting through those gateway classes and completing. In 2014, we started multiple measuring them. There were about 467 that registered, and we did a great job of getting them into English and math in their first semester. We have 1,635, and this year, the ones coming in fall, if you guys know our president, she was very clear to us, this is not a medical experiment. There will be no placebos. If multiple measures work, we give it to everybody. There's no placebos. So in 2016, everybody coming in is multiple measured, and everybody is getting our great Steve Watkins outreach department work in actually helping to sign up for their classes. So you might wonder then, what are the success rates if you've got your students doing this? And I just testified at a legislative hearing where they were saying BSI really hasn't done anything. Look at the 6-year cohort and the scorecard. So I just simply took that 6-year scorecard cohort and divided it into 2. And what I want you to see is that in the last 3 years, we are making remarkable success in a shorter time in all of the kinds of things that we feel are important. This is our BC data. I know it's a very busy slide, and these will be up so that you can look at them later, but this is our BC average success rate in all of our math classes through the basic skills math class, intermediate algebra, and on to our transfer level classes. So in 2014, this was our program review data and success rates. These were the students we multiple measured, about 467, and how well they each did in those classes when we multiple measured them in. None of them were hurt drastically, although you see up there in the transfer level, we were getting a little bit worried. But then if you look at these gold lines, this was last year's, this is fall data. Most people haven't even seen it here at BC. But those are the success rates of students that were multiple measured in, of the 1,600 in each of those classes. So what I want you to know from this is that when you implement it, it's got to be iterative. Not everything is going to come out showing great success, but you have to give it some time, and you have to ask what the questions are. What are the reasons that maybe people in Calc B1A, pre-Calc, weren't doing as well as the average people? So be patient with it. The other thing that I want to share with you is our English and Math Achieve the Dream data that shows our gateway success. This was our gateway course success. This was 2009 to 2013, and this is 2011 to 2014. So what you can see is that in our gateway courses, we're moving the dial. And we're not just moving it for everybody, we're actually closing some of our achievement gaps. And this is not a single effort. It's not just the magic pill of multiple measures that places them right, but it's accelerated classes and it's support. So what are we learning? Our student population doesn't do well with both English and math in the first semester. That's what all the data said across the United States. They need to have English and math first semester. Our ATD data showed that ones with English and math did better. But the students came to us because we had them assigned to mentors and said, you know, I had to drop one or the other. And indeed, here's our data. Only about 36% passed that had both math and English that first semester, as compared to ones, 53%, that took one class and then took the other one later. And these are our underprepared students. So we're encouraging math and English within the first year now. So it's iterative. We learned something. We're moving forward. We also learned that even though the national data says you need to have them full time at 15 units, our students can barely average 9 units a semester. And if you want to know why, talk to any one of them. I have a student from Arvin, 2-hour bus ride, $6 a day, 2 hours to get back home. I don't know if I could do 9 units if that was what my day looked like at school. We need to know more and work more on the pathways that are accelerated. We're getting great data and saving students a lot of time and money with our accelerated pathways, but we had a pretty big withdrawal rate this last semester, so we need to look at what's going on there. We know it's better. Our throughput is much greater, but we need to really analyze this and be iterative and be scientific about the way we look at it. Our students take and are successful at summer school. And if you had asked me up till now, I would have said, and many of my colleagues in the classroom would say, those are the CSU students that come back in the summer and do so well on that short schedule. It is not. I have tracked them. It is these students that are trying to get through 9 units, and summer is a godsend for them. They're taking real classes. They're doing better in the summer than they do in the year. It's an important component to remember. In 2015, fall 2015, we saved our students 2,111 semesters through multiple measures and improved testing.
All right, thank you, Dr. Folks. We'll have time for questions for all of our panelists at the end. Our second panelist today is a colleague of mine. He started working at Mount SAC in 1997 as a professor in the animation department and has worked in our campus leadership as an associate dean in the arts division and also in the outcomes coordination efforts on our campus. Currently, he's our associate dean of instructional services and is leading a new Pathways to Transfer program on our campus that's trying to get students through that basic skills sequence a little bit faster. So I'd like to introduce my colleague, Don Shore, to talk about the Pathways to Transfer program.
This thing scares me. First of all, I want a quick thank you and an apology. Thank you goes to Kate Pluta for helping me, and I promised her that I would do a 30-minute presentation in 5 minutes. My apology to all of you because I promised Kate Pluta I would do my 30-minute presentation in 5 minutes. So what's happening at Mount SAC? Let me make sure I hit the right button.
I want to become an engineer. Since I was below college algebra, it helped me boost up to where I have to be and where I need to go. So that really helped me give an express route to my plans, basically. And so now that I have completed my elementary math, I can continue with my trigonometry, my pre-cal calculus, and then that opens doors so I could take my physics and my chemistry and all that stuff and finally transfer to Cal Poly Pomona.
It was a little intimidating at first, but having such a passionate professor helped me actually succeed in the Pathways program.
Completing the college level English will help me transfer to the university so that I can get that degree in occupational therapy.
Okay, like many of you and a lot of things that we've talked about today, one of the biggest problems we have is getting students who are placed into Dev Ed into college level English and math. So what we're doing at Mount SAC, and well, because we know that often students don't see a clear path, they take too long, it takes too long to get to college level, they drop out when they meet with any obstacle, and they don't know how to get help. We know that with guided pathways, guided pathways encourage completion by giving the students the clear roadmaps to their goals, by offering on-ramps to programs of study, and this thing goes 2 at a time, and they were serious. Embedding advising and progress tracking, giving them feedback throughout their studies helps support them throughout their journey. All right, so Mount SAC has had a history of learning communities and offering pathways for students, especially with our model bridge programs, our summer bridge, which you heard about earlier. For over 20 years, Bridge has been supporting a specific population of students, freshmen or beginning students coming right out of high school. And what we wanted to do was build a model that was scalable, that could address all of our students and get them on a guided pathway. So based on the data, that's how many? I'm going to go really quick. 60% incoming students test into Math 50 with a typical success rate of, real quick, 50%. And more than 70%, this 2 at a time, of incoming students test into English 67, which is writing fundamentals, with a typical success rate of 60 to 65%. All right, so with that in mind, faculty and counselors and administrators got together to think about a model based on this bridge idea that could be scaled and adaptable to get students through their dev ed. So we developed pathways to transfer, and the result was a local initiative that is scalable, built on curriculum that already exists, financially viable, and grounded in research. So the short of it is we wanted to increase the percentage of students who successfully navigate through math and writing in prep for college level work. All right. So what went into the design? We wanted to create an accelerated timeline. We wanted to guarantee students enrollment and successful students in the next step. Linked learning and counseling courses, important component, with the same professor, the same classmates for peer support, and often the same or similar time slot, and then support from a designated tutor or supplemental instructor in and out of the classroom. So how it works is this, is first, in the inner sessions, we have a 6-week inner session in summer and winter. Students take a 6-week course to get started, and it's followed by 2 8-week courses back-to-back in the regular semester at an accelerated pace. So to just spell it out here, we started with our writing fundamentals. We moved to English prep for college writing and freshman composition in the second semester. And for math, we start with our pre-algebra, go to our elementary algebra, and intermediate algebra. So successful completion of each course guarantees enrollment in the sequence so they can stay on track for completion. The students are immersed in an engaging experience, and 22 weeks compared to 48 that it would normally take to get through that. So we wanted to make sure in our design of this program that we had the same courses and the same curriculum that were in the rest of the curriculum. No change to the enrollment priority, no special funding. The cost of in-class tutors is covered by the persistence. And the program starts where the student starts. In other words, we have a variety of options of starting points for the students. Now, there's a cost to the special scheduling, and then we have in-class orientation and advising. So what we did in the winter of 14 is we started with 3 English 67 classes and 4 Math 50s. We linked them with a support class, and the students moved into the next, successful students moved into the next back-to-back 8-week courses. And let's see, so what happened? When you wanted to go 2 at once, it doesn't. So in spring of 14, the English 1A, which is college level, we had, see how quick that was? We had a great success improvement. And for the Math 71, again, great improvement. So what we wanted to also look at was the progression. So are students following through on this pathway? Are they following the sequence? So you can see here that, we got a little nervous here right away with the Pathways course, but you can see what happens over time is that the students are staying in the sequence and completing the classes. So that persistence is going to make a difference. I'm going to show you the math, and then I'll go through these real quickly, because I know Jeff's watching the clock. So the same thing you can see happening, students are staying in, they're not dropping out, they're moving on to the next class at a much greater rate. And we can see that that continues to happen throughout the following semesters. I should have said blue being the pathways, huh? All right, then we wanted to compare the non-pathways, the 16-week courses, with the same class in the accelerated format. And you can see the success rates here. And then we'll look at, for the Math 71, when it was in the first 8 weeks, we have a almost 79% success. And then in the second 8 weeks, still much greater than the full 16-week course. Success rate for English 1A. And then we look at the first and the second, still gaining success.
The positives are that the success rates are higher generally speaking, for short-term classes. And that's because they're doing their homework and then we're testing soon after that. So the material is much fresher for them, and so they tend to test better. And
I feel that the accelerated pace did help me in the sense that everything stayed fresh. If I would have taken, say, the 51 in the spring and then the 71 in the fall, I think that time gap, I would have lost some of that knowledge that I learned in the previous semester. And with the pathway, since I didn't have that, everything stayed fresh. And I did feel that that was a big benefit in the sense that, I just took the final, and then the next week I started with the next course. And again, math being such a building block subject, it was ideal because it was still fresh in my mind.
And then we survey the students every semester to find out how it's working for them. And you can see that 75% agree or strongly agree that the class was better compared to previous college experiences. And because it guarantees enrollment in the next course, almost 90% agree or strongly agree that they were more committed to it. And then having access to the tutor in the classroom, 71% agree or strongly agree that that was very, very helpful.
it's just there's a link, there's a bond that the supplemental instructor provides inside the classroom with extra help, outside the classroom with extra help, and in the LCOM class by kind of linking the math class with the LCOM class. So the supplemental instructor being in the math class every day and also attending the LCOM class every day is awesome. I mean, it just works.
So to recap, we built curriculum using the courses that already existed. We required no change in enrollment, no special funding. Cost of the in-class tutors were covered by the persistence, the gain in FTEs. Program starts where the student starts and is supported by research and outcomes with a scalable design that we're working on scaling up. And it does require innovative scheduling and in-class orientation and advising and faculty participation, critical. The next step, we want to increase the number of cohorts that we have, and we're going to build our professional development opportunities for faculty concerned with the accelerated model. So
I would definitely recommend the Pathways program to any student that needs to complete their math or English classes.
I would definitely recommend the Pathways program because it's such an accelerated program that it helps you achieve your goals at a faster pace.
I would definitely recommend the Pathway programs to a friend because it motivates you. It gives you that drive to go and get something accomplished.
I was able to succeed. I got an A in both 51 and 71, which, yay for me, proud of myself for doing that because, again, it gave me the confidence to say, I can do college. I can actually get a degree. It did build my confidence to be able to achieve that program in such a short period of time.
You provide them extra resources, you increase the probability of them succeeding. And I think this is what it's all about. It's about, hey, can we go from 55% to 60% success? Can we go from 60 to 65% success? And I think that's what the Pathways program does. It gets these students on a more efficient model and a more successful model to get through these classes so they can move on.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Don. Our next presenter is another colleague of mine. He's been teaching in the mathematics department for 26 years, and he's been the pioneer of the Statway project and model at Mount SAC. And that's what he's here to talk to you today about, is the implementation and successes that we've had with the Statway model on our campus. So please welcome my colleague, Scott Guth.
Sort of getting used to it. All right, so I've been involved with the Carnegie Foundation's Statway project since the beginning, and as a faculty member at Mount SAC. I've worked with, one of the genius things about this project that's put out by the Carnegie Foundation is that it's really faculty driven. This is not some corporate project. It's not a for-profit. It's researchers working right alongside educators. I've had researchers come in my classrooms and I've seen them go into the classrooms of many other friends and faculty, and it's just amazing how we all learn together about quality teaching, about what works and what doesn't work. Are there any schools here besides Mount SAC that are using Statway? Anybody out there? Okay, so sort of. Okay, right. Yeah, well, we have a unique blend as well at Mount SAC, but yeah, so we're using it, so what it is it's a 2-semester pathway. Some colleges will compress it down to 1. And of course, the placement into the first semester is pretty much left to the college, and it's not being scrutinized much at the state level. We're making our own decisions about who takes that first semester. Then by the time you take your second semester and complete it, you've got a college level math class under your belt. It gives you B4 GE credit for the California State University, and it gives you a GETC math for the UC system. So anyone that just needs math for general education, the Statway program is set. It's ready to go. You don't have to fight for that. The biggest issue for us has been, it's a fantastic program, and I don't want to spend too much time on caveats. It is absolutely one of these new waves that's coming through that's not just about acceleration. It's about learning. It's about cognitive development. It's about using the best science and research we know to change the way we teach in a way that helps people really learn. It's absolutely revolutionized my own personal experience as a teacher, and I think that almost everybody that's been involved has had the same experience. You cannot think about these pathways that are being created without thinking about what it is that's happening in the classroom. One of the requirements that the Carnegie Foundation has is that faculty that teach, every one of them, has to be trained. And that is with them. So we're all shipped up in the summers or in the winters to go through these pretty long sessions on what it is to be a Statway teacher. And almost all of us that go through that find us trying to implement those new things we learn into our other classes. And I think that's really the key is if you guys, any of you choose to implement one of these accelerated programs that kind of focuses not on just shortening a path, but improving the mode of delivery, that you have to make sure that you have a solid commitment to the training and the teaching and the support, not just of students, but of teachers, because it's like a jungle out there when you step into a new world teaching in a way that you never taught before and had no model for. I think that with all of the research that's gone on in education, the amount that actually impacts the classroom, I think, is sort of discouragingly small. So I'm going to quickly, let me get to caveats real quick here. So at Mount SAC, we are covering the Statway curriculum, but one of the requirements that my department had was it's not good enough just to get GE. We wanted statistics articulations. So when you see what I'm about to present, and I'm going to go through this really quickly, but when you see what I'm about to present, you're going to see the kind of the result of a fair amount of trial and error. We wanted the second semester, which is already getting the GE, UC and CSU, we got that. But we needed articulation agreements for statistics, regular statistics. And that's one thing that hasn't really been solved yet. Maybe we're getting close to it, but we'll see how that goes. But right now I want to show you what our solution is. Okay, so this is the Mount Statway implementation. We call it integrated statistics. And it's for students who are eligible for beginning algebra. Those students normally would have a 3-semester path. We're cutting it down to 2, all right? And they're taking the first course, which we call integrated intermediate algebra. Okay, but you have to be eligible for beginning to get into it. So we're basically hopping over the beginning algebra. You see that? Okay, 2 courses instead of 3. Heavy emphasis on teaching with best practices. Cannot overemphasize that. And I think I've covered everything else here. You can see the last bullet here. The second course at Mount SAC is articulating. And as I said, our primary goal was to get those articulation agreements. The way we've done it is getting them. So I'll go ahead and describe the 2 courses. The first semester is called Integrated Intermediate Algebra. The second is called Integrated Statistics. You don't see Statway anywhere on there. Okay. The first semester, and you can see we've got this prerequisite of beginning algebra. We cover the main topics of intermediate algebra, and we omit side topics. Now, what are the side topics? We cut out basically a third of the semester. Okay, it's the same number of units. We're talking about a 5-unit class. Okay, and then in the last third of the semester, we actually start teaching Statway. A couple of chapters worth of Statway material. We put it on hold, the semester ends, and then we go into the next semester. We call that integrated statistics. Okay, it's called Math 110S. The fact that it's Math 110 and it's exactly the same number that's used for the CID descriptor for statistics is maybe wishful thinking on our part. It's also a 5-unit course, and the prereq, of course, is this other course. It covers all the traditional elementary statistics topics, uses the Statway materials and the productive struggle learning model, which is essentially, just in a nutshell, students work in groups and they sort of are given problems to figure out before the material is taught. We kind of front load it with problems, and then that sort of creates this mode in your brain where you're really receptive to learn. And then comes a lecture, and then more of the same over and over all semester long. Okay. Now, as far as outcomes go, the Statway program across all of the colleges that participate gets about 60% throughput. That's completing both semesters, and that's pretty good. The Mount SAC implementation is a harder program because we've got this intermediate algebra that's been sort of fused in with the curriculum. We get 36% throughput on the first attempt, and when we count students that repeat because they failed one course, we get 41%. Now you would compare that to 5% throughput through a traditional math sequence at Mount SAC. We only get 5% on the first attempt. That's 4 years of data that we've looked at. We get 5% of people going through all 3 courses in one attempt. Eventually, we pick up closer to 13.5% is what we've got for 4 years. Okay, that's with repeats. So we can't even hit 15%. So we're tripling that with ours. And those are our primary outcomes. We're pretty pleased. And we've got the GE for CSU and for AGETSI. And then we've got articulation agreements with this approach. You can see we've gotten, these are the colleges we've asked for articulation agreements on. And we've gotten articulation agreements for some statistics class at every school we've asked. Most schools have multiple statistics courses. So you can see we've got a couple pending. We're waiting for that CID designation with others that will follow as we continue to ask for articulation agreements. So I think we're one of the only schools that have gotten articulations with the Cal State and with the University of California as a statistics course, not just general ed. And I think that wraps it up. There was a little breaking news I thought I should throw in. If you don't know it, as of fall 2015, the UC is no longer requiring intermediate algebra as a prerequisite to statistics. To math departments everywhere, this is almost like the floor falling out from under you. The CSU, in addition, is introducing some big changes as well, inviting colleges to submit 2-semester statistics pathways for Area B for credit. Again, there is no statistics articulation that's being contemplated here. They're just talking about GE, okay? But it's sort of going out into the mainstream right now. There is still effort to get a CID for the second semester of Statway, but I don't know if you see this third bullet. It's a little tricky to kind of figure. Math 110 CID is the traditional statistics articulation CID descriptor. There's a new one that's being contemplated right now, Math 111, a CID subscriptor that we're worried a lot of these statistics pathways that the second semester would get pigeonholed into that. And we're kind of against this. We want the second semester to drop into a 110 descriptor, which is just statistics. And you see, it has to go into one of these descriptors so that it can be placed into the transfer model curricula for the different transfer degrees. If we don't get the descriptor, you can't use it into the big pathways that we're all working on. So this is sort of the game we're playing. We're really close with the approach we've taken. Lots of other colleges have tried different ways.
All right, thank you, Scott. Our fourth speaker is coming to us from Butte College, where she is the Student Success Coordinator and manages the Basic Skills Initiatives. She's here to talk about some of their acceleration initiatives. So please welcome Dr. Catherine McKinnon.
All right, let's see if I can get this thing to work. Oh, there we go. Wrong way. All right.
We're lost.
I'm trying.
Hold the button.
Okay, thank
That's
you, upper
mine.
people. Okay. There we go. Thank you. Alrighty, we've got a lot going on at Butte College, and I'm going to touch widely on a lot of things and a little more heavily on a couple of the things I think are more relevant to what our researchers have been talking about. We have a lot of things in motion. As Samia mentioned in a previous panel, our English acceleration program, we were an early adopter in the state. In 2011, we piloted with 2 sections of 1 and 2 level below transfer English acceleration course. We have scaled up to 20 sections at this point. In spring of 2016, we have an in-house training program for faculty teaching this program and an ongoing community of practice to help keep this program together. Because the program is doing fairly well, we're looking at developing a English acceleration course at the 3 and 4 level below transfer to replace our two remaining traditional developmental courses, hoping to implement in spring 2017. The faculty who are developing the second acceleration course were integral to the co-developer and one of the first generation English acceleration course. For the first acceleration course are co-developing the second one. Our math folks are interested in how this has been going for us, and we have, I think last count, 4 or 5 math faculty interested and committing to developing our first math acceleration course. So we're moving forward well with the acceleration sequence. Also, as Carrie Robertson noted, we do have our early childhood education Spanish certificate program for ESL learners, and we are hoping that we can develop some additional ESL CT pathways partnerships based on this model. Lessons learned. We had a different experience with our supplemental instruction program with our developmental students in math in particular. We found that we were able to embed our supplemental instructors in the math courses. Our faculty were very happy with this, but students did not attend the supplemental instruction sections outside of our math courses themselves. We are a rurally located college. A lot of our students have very limited time on our campus. They have to get back home for work. They have to go back for childcare. They have other commitments, and so they have limited time available to go to things outside of our class. So based on this lesson, we are going to be piloting some push-in embedded academic supports directly in the classroom with tutoring and academic mentoring in our developmental level courses, especially in our math courses, and our lower end English acceleration course. We also tried some applied academics, our math for the trades and writing for the trades courses. They were very well received. Students had a lot of success in them, but we had a lot of trouble keeping them sustained because we had limited faculty resources in the content areas and especially in math to be able to teach those courses, to make them available to teach those courses. So that program hasn't been able to scale up to our welding and building inspection programs the way that we had hoped we would be able to do. But it was a very strong program. We really liked the contextualized instruction elements, and so we are looking into some alternative contextualized models for learning for our students. Things that we're doing right now that are working pretty well for us. We have a strong Reg to Go program. This brings our assessment, placement, and counseling folks directly into the high schools in the spring semester. They're really getting going right about now, working with students directly to get them placed into the college. So we already have these existing partnerships with our local high schools. We have 38 local high schools, one of the largest numbers in the state. Our assessment director likes to tell me. So we are expanding on those programs and building those connections. We are piloting, we're partnering with one of our feeder high schools, Oroville Union High School District, a curriculum alignment pilot where we have faculty from the college and from the high school in math and English meeting to discuss their curriculum, their teaching philosophies, and get a sense of how the placement systems are working at Butte College. Lots of really interesting outcomes from that. One of the outcomes is that as you can see on the in-progress side, the math boot camp expansion, Oroville High School superintendent was so excited with what he was hearing from his math faculty and from our math faculty that he is going to require all students in the Reg to Go who place in the lowest levels of our math placement to go to the math boot camp, which is a 2-day program that helps rev students back up into their mathematics knowledge. A lot of our Oroville High School students stop their math. They only take 2 years and they finish in sophomore, and then they test in their senior year and they haven't had math for 2 years. So the boot camp model is designed to help those students return to the knowledge they had before so they're ready to assess more accurately into the math program. We also have a lot going on with our high school partnerships. The dual enrollment and Career Pathways Trust are 2 places we're exploring with our high schools, doing more contextualized learning so that students can move into pathways with us that'll get them to completion and to credentials for degrees as quickly as possible. And as I mentioned before, we are piloting embedded supports in our developmental levels for math and English, hopefully in the very near future. Oh, and the Data Exchange Summit. We are working with CalPass and several of our local area high schools. Our county Office of Education is also taking a leadership role in this, and we're going to have a Data Exchange Summit in April, where we'll be working together to figure out how to streamline data from the high schools to the college to help with our placement decisions. And finally, the multiple measures collaboration and the English co-requisite pilot. Our multiple measures collaboration, as I was talking with Andy from College of the Canyons earlier, and they are running into the same issues that we are. As we're doing an accelerated curriculum, we're finding that, and we also have the multiple measures things happening, and of course the Common Assessment Initiative, we're finding that we really need to sit down together, assessment, counseling, and faculty in our English and math programs, and work back through our placement processes and align our curriculum and our placement much more closely, because things have been in so much flux for the last few years. So we are planning to get started on that process and really dive deeply together over the next year or so to revamp our placement system based on all the new data that's coming out about placement from our P group and our other researchers, as well as our own experiences with this. Oh, English co-requisites, co-pilot. Sorry, I'm having to read off the slide quickly. I had planned to have things slide in one at a time so that you and I could keep track of things, but apparently PowerPoint's not cooperating with us today, so sorry about this. The English co-requisite pilot, we have had the experience what our Dr. Henson calls a happy accident, where when we changed our assessment program a few years ago, our assessment instrument, we found that we were having twice as many students placed directly into transfer English. And as a result, we increased our sequence completion for English through the Gateway English course, almost doubled for overall, and for some of our equity dashboard groups, those numbers were more in the tripling what our completion rates for the English sequence were. So based on those outcomes, we are interested in doing a co-requisite pilot so that we can support students who are kind of on that borderline developmental English to transfer level, to support those students into succeeding in completing the English sequence more quickly by offering them a co-requisite to support them through that transfer level program. Next steps on the pathway for us as a college. As Samia also mentioned, we have a lot going on campus in terms of conversations around guided pathways. Our Student Success Committee, I'm a co-chair, and the other co-chair is also here, Suzanne Grippenstraw. You'll be hearing from her later. We adopted the other book in common, Redesigning America's Community Colleges, as part of our committee work this year, and we've been working through a couple of chapters at a time and having discussions with our committee members. Our committee draws from across campus, and it's really kind of a think tank for us because we have such a wide collaboration in the committee. It's served this way for the campus for several years, coming on a decade now, I believe. And a lot of the ideas that have moved the college forward have come out of the Student Success Committee. So a lot of our campus leaders are there, and it's been a really important place to incubate these ideas. Our next steps, Samia outlined many of those for you in terms of getting faculty buy-in and getting faculty to take ownership of this process as we look at moving into a more systematic model. And I think this is the biggest issue that our college is facing and that many of you are facing too. We have all these little pieces that I've been describing, all these little parts that we've been moving. It's like a Jenga game. We've been pulling out piece by piece by piece, for those of you who play Jenga or pick up sticks, stick by stick by stick. But we're getting to the point where we have to look at the whole system. We need to deal with it all together as it all interacts with each other. And so as part of that, we need to have better collaboration and communication across the institution. And so to help us have that start to happen, we're having more report outs from our key administrators. They're attending each other's meetings, SSSP, Student Equity, Student Success Committee, Basic Skills Initiative, Career Pathways. All of those folks were in communication with each other. We attend each other's meetings. We report out to each other's meetings. But we've also started to create a spreadsheet that's a master spreadsheet to track what initiatives are happening on campus with each of our various areas. And we're in process on this, but it's going to be housed online. And all of us administrators will have access to it and be able to see what's happening with different student populations, who the key contact people are for each initiative, where it's being funded, so that we can avoid duplication and so that we can build on each other's efforts. And that's one of the things I'm proudest of that we're in process with. So as you see, we can do these boutique programs, these little programs, as much as we want, but I think the Guided Pathways model offers us something beyond this, something that is so exciting for us across the institution that it really is our next step as an institution.
All right, I'm going to quickly introduce our last speaker because we're running low on time here. He's a professor here at Bakersfield College in the astronomy department for 20 years. He's been active on campus in a lot of different roles, and he's here to talk to you about one thing you've heard very little about today, which is money. Please welcome Nick Strobel.
Okay. There we are. Okay, at Bakersfield College, we have done a soft launch of the Renegade Promise. If the student will commit to 15 units per semester of degree applicable courses, we promise to get them out in 2 years. In order to make this a reality, a guided pathways approach will need to be used. So we've begun calculating the financial impact in preparation for making the promise to the public later this spring. Well, to share with you what we have calculated so far, I'm going to approach it as making a business case for guided pathways. Does it make sense to spend money in this way to make it happen? Well, there's the two. Well, there are three audiences for this question: the student, the taxpayer, and the college. Well, okay, that's fine. We can do two at a time. The latest Education Pays data shows with the median annual earnings for an associate degree holder, they will earn over $193,000 more than a high school graduate in 30 years. If we can get them to be on a track to a bachelor's degree, well, that boosts the lifetime bonus to more than $675,000 over that high school graduate. Now, the cost savings for the student, well, of course, is the lower number of units they take to get a degree. In a California community college, a student pays $46 per unit. Adding the cost of textbooks, living expenses while attending school, and then lost time not earning money at a job while attending classes, you need to multiply that cost savings by a factor of about 3. Now, we do know that many of our students do take more than 60 units to get a degree, but we're still crunching the numbers for how many units it takes our average student to get a degree. One way we have already reduced costs to the students is by accelerating remediation and multiple measuring students to place them at a higher level. Well, Janet Folks mentioned that we saved the students 2,111 semesters worth in fall 2015, getting students into transfer level courses. Well, my calculation puts that at over $388,000 in saved tuition, and then you multiply that by 3 to get the total cost to the student. All right, so for the taxpayer, let's see what that does. Oh, did it one at a time, good. The associate degree holder is going to bring in more to the state coffers because of higher income taxes. It's about $11,640 more in state taxes than a high school graduate over 30 years. Not to mention the savings in publicly funded programs associated with health care, welfare, and the criminal justice system. It's even better for a bachelor's degree holder, about $49,350 more in state taxes than a high school graduate over 30 years. Now, the cost savings to the taxpayer for this is, of course, less units students have to take means less FTES funding the state has to provide. For example, that 2,111 semesters saved through our accelerated remediation and multiple measures work has saved the taxpayers over $1.3 million. So it definitely benefits the taxpayers. Oh, wow, look at that. Okay, that's good. All right, for the college, well, we know that there will be increased expenditures. We have already begun laying the groundwork for implementing guided pathways through SSSP and equity funding and becoming more focused on proper placement of students and making sure that they have a student education plan. The SSSP and equity funding has been used primarily to front load students onto a path, but there are also expenses for the follow through. Now, in the redesigning America's community colleges, Bailey, Jaggers, and Jenkins identified 5 areas of increased expenditures for creating guided pathways. There's faculty time, professional development, administrator time, upgrading computer systems, and then hiring more counselors and advisors. Well, you can map the SSSP funding onto those 5 areas. In 2014-15, we spent here at BC $2.3 million in SSSP money and $4.2 million in GUI matching funds in SSSP-related activities. Well, that makes a total of $6.5 million in a college with 13,880 FTES and about 20,500 in the head count. We have increased the number of counselors to 18 full-time, 4 part-time, and 17 full-time educational advisors, and have searches going on for 3 more advisors. Well, for our Renegade Promise, we need to make sure there are no bottleneck courses that students are not able to get into due to lack of space. We need to be sure that there are enough additional instructors to teach additional sections of the identified bottleneck courses. Well, how do we estimate that cost or determine if there are bottlenecks? That is something actually we're still working on. Did it again. 1 click. Thank you. There we go. So it's unclear if you can actually make a business case for the college. However, the mission of the college is education, not making money. Education ensures the survival of our society. We're in the people transformation business. That's something on which you really can't put a price. If you give someone a fish, you feed them for a day. Teach someone to fish, and you feed them for a lifetime. So education is a high-touch endeavor if you want to do it right. It requires many, many one-on-one interactions. It's very people-intensive. It requires money to pay all those people. But with so many students wasting so much time because they don't have a clear path, guided pathways are worth the investment. Thank you.
All right, if you would, join me in thanking all of our panelists one more time. I think we're short on time, so I'm going to look at the powers that be to see if we have time for questions. Do we?
We don't have time for questions. Let's get the lights up in the theater, please. Folks, we're going to do a guided pathways redesign right now. We're going to take 60 minutes of program left and squeeze it into 20 minutes. And the way we're going to do it, let's give our panelists a round of applause. My goodness, students are saving money, the taxpayers saving money, and we are in the business of transforming lives. Thank you very much. So this is what we're going to do. Matt and Sonia do not wrap up. That's been cut out of the program. We are not going to be doing team reports. Instead, we're going to just take comments from the audience, and we're going to bring up Leslie, Kimberly, and Stephanie while our panel 2 members exit stage, right or left? And we're also going to be bringing up our keynote speaker, Dr. Davis Jenkins, if he has final wrap-up comments. So with that, ushers, are you ready? Okay, comments, questions, the team leads. If you are wanting to report out, this is your time. In 20 minutes, we'll get you out of there. And Butte College, you have 6 hours. Instead of getting there at 9:30, you'll get there at 10 p.m. So ushers, you're ready. Shall someone report out from a team? I thought Sierra College. Sierra College. All right, over there. Microphone.
Hi, my name is Amy Myers. I'm from Sierra College, and I wanted to talk for just a moment about some of the things that have been striking for me and my colleagues today. We have recently created a presidential task force to work on this idea of re-engineering. So there's 15 faculty with a release time to begin to look at possibilities using the book that almost feels like the Bible at this point, I think. One of the things that I think is exciting is we're dividing up into groups in order to begin to ask questions. And one of the groups is called Disruptive Change. And I jumped up and down and I get to help with this disruptive change. But the other challenge, though, I think that we all know is that change is hard and it can be challenging. And I think that's one of the things that we're really thinking about and trying to work with. The other challenge that we have that really struck me with this last panel was being able to see what's already happening. So much of what happens we don't always know about. I didn't know we were going to turn up on a slide, today, for example. Go figure. So that idea of collaboration, that idea of spreadsheets, those ways of sharing what's already been done, I think is going to be very important as we begin to move forward.
Do we have our next college? So we just heard from Sierra College. Do we have Cabrillo in the room? Vicky? There she is.
So now we know Cabrillo may have left her. Actually, no, they're here tomorrow.
Yeah, I can hardly see. Are we down in the front?
Does this work? Does this work? I'm here.
Perfect. You work.
Thanks, Vicky. Ian Haslam's my name, Cabrillo College. I would say, 3 years ago, I was doing large-scale reform in the Middle East of schools. And the one thing that was non-negotiable was numeracy and literacy skills for adult learners. So for me, a takeaway was a developmental education reform statewide, not just a few colleges that have got some great programs, statewide. It's a must. The second thing that I'm going to take away is I'm the Dean of Health, Athletics, Wellness, and Kinesiology. That includes nursing and dental hygiene and the like. And we've had guided pathways for a long time, I think. Very strict programs of entry, very serious and high-stakes program that requires an awful lot of faculty group meetings and conversations about student success, and it's a terrific model. And we have the same one in dental hygiene and rad tech and the like. But I think the one that intrigues me the most is the athletics program. We never think about it in educational terms. We oftentimes think about it in entertainment terms. But what they do to select students and how they monitor their progress every single week throughout the entire year that they're involved is phenomenal. And it's that kind of tracking of students that will guarantee success in the end. And the success rates of our athletics program and our students in terms of their performance in class and transfer is generally above the average of the college, if not the average of the state. So that's really impressive. And the last thing I want to say is that from the point of view of the Guided Pathways book, the one chapter that really piqued my interest was chapter 5. and that was the engagement of faculty and staff. And I've heard lots of examples of how people are getting together to have serious discussions about curriculum renewal and curriculum development. And if you look at the literature on large-scale reform, that needs compensating. And it needs to be built in to regulations and into contracts so that it is a mandatory part of professional collaboration. Peers, teachers teaching teachers. And there's some really good examples in the K-12 system right now of groups of master teachers who are implementing state curriculum changes across the state, going from school to school, and are seconded for a year while they do that, so that they can work with teachers in remote areas and in urban centers to help them to implement the new standards of numeracy and literacy in California. So that's my takeaway. Sorry, a bit rushed there. Just ran in from the outside.
I'm David King. I teach, I'm chair of the dance department at Cabrillo College. And, you know, I looked out at the crowd at lunch and I was like, there are some people who remember a dot matrix printer. Do you guys remember the dot matrix? And they were so fiendishly loud. And my mother, I think she studied gracious living at Reed College in the 1960s. And she took a class in from Lloyd Reynolds, who, after he dropped out of college, Steve Jobs took calligraphy without paying at Reed College. And, you know, I say this because we don't know what the next jobs will be, with the pun intended. We don't know what the next career will be. And so as we're looking forward and as we're training students, the next generation, I reject the category of career and non-career pathways. And I'd like to follow on what Dean Haslam said. It's really interesting to see where the students will take their education with our support. So that's my dying microphone for today. Look, a new one. So exciting. Yeah, so in relation to steps that we're taking at Cabrillo, one of the things that, a course that we brought into curriculum a few years ago is a Arts Innovation in Business course. It's a business course with arts entrepreneurship as its focus. A course we're building to tie in with is a creative careers introduction, multidisciplinary introduction to the arts and creative careers course that will tie in with the business and arts entrepreneurship course. So, like I said, we don't know what the next jobs will be, but I reject the category of career and non-career pathways.
And can we just hear from Career Ladders, who is the third group signed up? Wonderful. Oh.
Hi, I'm Linda Collins. I'm the Executive Director of the Career Ladders Project, and several of my colleagues are here from Career Ladders. I just want to say I couldn't find a more exciting day than today to be with people from across the state talking very concretely and practically about something so large and important as systems change. I think many of us, as I was listening to the different things people were saying and all the work that's going on, I was really struck by the creative and innovative fervor of the last 15 years, coming from all different directions. From math and English faculty, who are really trying to rethink the developmental sequence, and wondering and asking fundamentally challenging and upsetting questions like, do we need a singular math pathway? Or is there only one way through quantitative reasoning? And what would it mean to backwards design from the ultimate goal? And would UC and CSU accept that? Or I think about the CTE faculty who've been working really hard to map and redesign their programs and streamline them. And also to think about, is it possible to stack our certificates so that everything counts and students never have to start over? Each one builds to the next. And then can we nest or embed those within a degree and transfer structure so that students can stop out and work, they can gain those credentials and support their way through further education? Those are really challenging questions. But whichever corner we're starting from, we find, on the one hand, the data suggests that these evidence-based practices can immediately make huge differences for large numbers of students. But we also see that no matter where you start, we bump up against the structures of our colleges, the traditional disciplines and departments that have their own corner, or think about, well, when their students are with me in my class or me in my program. Or we think in the community colleges about their time with us. But we miss altogether that in some of our communities down the road in K-12, some of the most profound transformations are occurring with pathways projects in high schools, linked learning among them, where they're asking fundamentally, how do we change that old divide between career and college? It has to be college and career. Or we're even hearing, as I think the Statway professor talked about, that CSU is now beginning to re-examine, and guess what? UC is beginning to re-examine. Do they need the same mathematics in bioscience and medical science as they do in social science? And actually, some of the medical schools are breaking away from the traditional math sequence. What? Wherever we go, these old structures need to be re-examined. And if we're going to build K-16 pathways for students, the faculty, the teachers, the counselors, the administrators across all of these institutions will need to get together. We've been so privileged and excited to be part of that journey with many of you in your colleges, and we just couldn't think of anything more important to dedicate ourselves to in the coming years. So I really want to thank Bakersfield College for bringing this together and all of the different people who contributed. And also, it was really great to see Davis Jenkins on that bumpy plane ride last night. Thanks.
Wow, what energy at the end of a very long day, but a very amazing day. And thank you very much for that input. So Sonia, we listened and we learned a lot. But how exciting to leave with this kind of energy. I mean, I've been behind the scenes with this all day. So I'm Kimberly. I'm the department chair here for our basic skills area and Title V director. And we've been doing a lot of work here. We've been doing a lot of collaboration. But I really want to make sure that we understand the importance of students and their involvement in all of this process, not just behind the scenes and we're building this, but that they're actively a part of this decision-making process. So we are fortunate to have a very active student government association here, and they sit on a lot of our committees, and we have a great representative that you listened to very, very early this morning. Thank you, Clayton, for sharing your experience, because I think without knowing the experience of a student, we just make the assumption that someone who's a student government officer, you know, must have just known what they were doing from the beginning. And I know Leslie and myself had very similar journeys, very long journeys, because we didn't have that guidance. But I'm excited, I'm ready. I got to talk to some of our Delano staff at lunch and got to hear what's going on from their perspective. I talked to some very different faculty members from different areas, criminal justice and communication, and just kind of pose, what does this look like for you? What do you think about this? What's going on in your area? And are you excited? And just in those two areas alone, I can already sense that the excitement is here, it's building, and we're ready to go. And I don't know about the rest of you, but I think it's not just our local schools, but all the way across. If we can share and collaborate all of our ideas, I can't wait to find out more about Butte. I've always been wanting to not necessarily go there, but but it's been a long day, and my Fitbit is really mad at me for sitting so much. So I hope that I'm not complaining though, because your day is going to get a little bit longer, right, Suzanne?
Yes, we still have to drive back to Butte College. My name is Suzanne Grippenstraw from Butte College, and I've been in developmental education for about 20 years, and now I'm serving as interim dean. And we're in that highly coveted position of being the last presenters for the day. I have to share with you that I'm also the parent of a community college student, and this has been really informative for me to see what students see. And while I was waiting backstage, I got a text from him, and it said, "Screw biology."
Where's Janet?
I know, where's Janet? Yes. So I'm sitting here worried about his guided pathway and his meta major and his future career. I think it was just a really rough 6-chapter test that we got results. So we began our day with Clayton's story and his experience as a student, and I'd like to sort of bookend our afternoon with an image of another student. During our first week of classes, I sat at our Ask Me table, and we have this chance to just help students find their classes and rooms. And one of my former students walked by. Her name's Mindy. And I had her for a developmental reading class. And I asked her what she was taking this semester, and she said, "Oh, I'm taking ballroom dancing, I'm on the wait list for sign language, and I'm in either psychology or sociology. I'm not sure, I always get those confused." And then she said she wanted to pick up another class. So I asked her, what are you working towards? I wanted to try to help her find a class. And she said, well, I'm thinking about medical. So, exactly. So I said, medical what? And she said, well, maybe nursing. My dad thinks I'd be good in nursing. So I thought, perfect. I'll see if I can find a math class for her, a science class. So I asked her which level of math she was in, or which math class she had, and she says, I've failed Math 108 twice, which is our pre-algebra class. So this was very worrisome. But what it did for me was it helped me see that what I always believed was good counseling and good assessment would get students into the right place. And it showed me that, no, Mindy needed a lot more. She needed a guided pathway to help her be successful here. Maybe my son does too. I don't know. So our job was to wrap up for the day. So I've been listening to what sort of ideas and themes have floated to the surface. And what I'd like to do is just read you a list of some of those words. So you can just relax and listen. Student success and completion, dual enrollment, career explorations, embedded advising, tracking students, choosing early, redesigning California community colleges, engagement, encouraged, strategic scheduling, churning, early transfer, completion, excessive units, intentional, best practices, collaboration, proactive approach, meta majors, creating meaningful pathways, leadership matters, multiple measures, underplacement, academic velocity, Limpy Creek Trailhead, 7 levels of hell, 9, pleasant waiting room, multiple measures, collaboration and communication between high schools and colleges, money, engaging with data and changing policy, on-ramp, true capacity of our students, fierce urgency now, and don't panic.
Nice list, Suzanne. With that, let's bring out Dr. Davis Jenkins, who's trying to get to a flight, I understand. Davis Jenkins!
I feel good about you guys. I mean, I felt good about you coming in because I love coming out here. I love the work. You guys are nuts, and that's why I like to come here. There's always stuff going on. The question is it channeled in a direction? And I feel like with the Lynn, I think put it well, and there's been so much ferment here over the last, and the country has looked out here so much for learning about innovation and student learning. But I think California is really poised with the folks here regionally and then as a state, as our nation state, to really take the next step and pull this together. I would urge you to think about going back and doing this mapping exercise, just jumping in with it, making sure you got folks from across disciplines, making sure you're consulting with the Senior Institute University folks and with your employers, and thinking about it from the pathway, from the standpoint of the student. It's a really enriching exercise that if you go and if you find that everything's fine, then you don't have to do anything further. But just having the conversations across the silos, I think is going to be potentially enriching and really help your students and help, channel all this energy you folks have and this innovation toward, a more strategic goal. CCRC and the field, I know nationally, wants this to happen, wants this work to happen in California. You're the biggest system by far. You drive much of what is perceived as community colleges nationally. So anything we can do and want to continue to learn from you, we're ready. We do have on our website this website called What We Know About Guided Pathways. If you don't want to buy the book, I appreciate people doing it, but if you don't want to, there's some boiled down stuff. And at the bottom there is a template that's a planning template. And we found it, colleges have found it useful it sort of lays out what guided pathways could look like for the student. And in not a very prescriptive way, but sort of an idealized way. And it's a good discussion piece if you're just sort of getting into this with your faculty and staff and folks back at your colleges. Also, we did an assessment of the 30 ACC colleges, including 3 from California, and we'll send you, if you want, or we'll send to Sonia the report we did, not naming names of colleges, but to show where these institutions nationally are on these practices. And that I think is a useful exercise too. So I'm feeling good about you guys. I'm not panicking. But I'm saying, let's go for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Davis. You're excused. And Leslie, do you want to wrap us up? Or?
Sure, yeah.
Next time you come out, you get
One of the
bounced.
things that I was thinking while I was sitting here on this panel is that we have a saying at Bakersfield College that it's a good time to be at BC, and I was thinking what a good time it is to be in California. So I'm just really excited about the work ahead. I think I heard a lot of different messages today about redesigning curriculum and what that looks like, and I want to remind us to maintain a focus on embedding those support services, because those are the types of things that help students learn what their career goals might be, the summer bridges that can help them get prepped for college, get that college knowledge, and that's the kind of thing that can help reduce those achievement gaps. So I think pathways are a method to attain equity here in California. So I think it's a good time to be in California, and I hope that you'll stick around to hear more about what the direction we're heading in California for a potential Pathways project here locally and what we can do collaboratively. All right, so I think with that, we're good.
We are adjourned.
Ladies and gentlemen, please return your ID badges in the foyer. And don't forget to fill out your surveys. It helps us put on a better show.